Hello, movie watchers, and welcome to episode 4 of the Lunar's Cut, your place for long form, raw, and unedited TV show and movie discussion that we are passionate about this week. I'm Kevin Kaine. He's Travis Moon. Come join us on the edge of those seats. First off, housekeeping. Where can you watch us? This show is part of the Moon Movie Review YouTube channel. So go to that YouTube channel. That link will be in the description. Also, you can find this in the podcast form on various podcast services out there, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. As always, those links will also be in the description. Also, let me give a shout out to Dan and the crew at Crowd and Town Creative for our awesome intro and outro music. You can find them for your creative needs at www.crowdandtown.com. Now, quick update. The promised session 2 of Cowboy Bebop sadly died on us while recording it, all hour and a half of it. We apologize. It's going to take a little bit longer to finally get that out there. My suggestion, which I haven't approved with Travis yet, is to just get drunk and do that episode. That way we can actually enjoy it, because it's going to be super weird to talk about the same thing again for another hour and a half. But hopefully we'll get that done. Our bad. That's rough. But anyways, Travis, let's start this episode. Today we have our movie discussion of Alita, Battle Angel. Alita, Battle Angel. What did you think?
I absolutely freaking loved it. So, as some of you have watched my reviews, I won't call myself a hard critic. I tend to give everything a pretty decent score. I like to look for the good stuff in movies. But if you knew me like personally, everything has problems, and like everything gets critiqued, even more so than I put in my videos. Like I actually do get pretty hard on just about every film that I've ever watched. But I absolutely loved everything about this. I literally had like no issues up until a couple days after I like reflected on it. But the only issues I had, they're so minor. Like they're basically irrelevant. And like if you and I were to have a real discussion, you as the movie watcher, Kevin, not you, Kevin, but it would literally take 10 seconds to explain, and then it would be over with and done with, and I would be moved on, because this movie is actually fantastic. There are very few movies I ever go back and watch more than one time in the movie theater, and this is one of those movies. I've already seen it twice. I'm hoping it'll stay in theaters, like The Star is Born is still in theaters. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully it'll stay in theaters for a while. Because I thought it was freaking awesome. So, what do you think?
Quick update into your point. A Star is Born is still in the theaters, partly because it's also for Oscar contention. A lot of those movies are being brought back to theaters, so arguably not because of how good it is / because of how good it is. Like, it's not in there. There might have been a point where it was out of theaters, but because it got nominated, they're throwing it back into theaters for people who want to go watch those movies. There's a few of the Oscar nominated movies I wanted to watch, but they were such a small release. Like, The Favorite was in 2 theaters and like really far away from me, right, so I didn't end up watching it. But anyways, tangent, reeling it back in. Alita Battle Angel is a movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. I've watched it twice. I am far more willing to watch a movie more than once in theaters than you are.
Yep.
I do it quite often. So it's different barometer for me. I know that you like to rank things and have numerical values. I think the best way that, if you were to ask me how do I rank this, my answer to you for this movie is that this is a movie I'm going to buy day one when it comes on Blu-ray.
Heck yeah.
That is probably the best opinion I can give of it, right? As much as I like some other movies, like I watched 8th Grade, I really enjoyed that, but I'm not rushing out to get that and put it on my DVD shelf, right? But Battle Angel is a lot of fun. I knew what to expect going into it, just based off the fact that this property is started off as a manga. It also had its own anime movies.
Help me with that word, manga.
So, full stop. I'm sure somebody's going to comment and correct me fully.
Sure,
but from my experience, for me,
I'm sorry, I don't know what the word manga means.
To me, what manga is a Japanese comic book. This is like a really short, simple explanation. So they're picture books, just like we have comic books. They call them mangas. Uh, there's also a version called a light novel, which is essentially just a novel that's maybe for kids. But a manga is you're a version of a comic book, but in Japan.
Cool.
They have their own style,
Got it.
general style and tropes, and the way they describe, like a crash, boom, kick. When
Yeah.
Batman
Wow.
punches
Yeah.
somebody, they have their own little tropes like that in their comic book style. So that's what manga is. So it started off as a comic book. They made some. This was back when. And again, I wasn't a fan back then, but I did a little bit of research before starting this. That the Alita anime were more like short movies as opposed to TV series back right when mangas were getting, or sorry, animes were getting popular. They were super popular to make short little movies of adapting the comic books. Just like VHS, you share them with your friends back when the technology wasn't too great, and then progressively TV series got more popular. So that's when they stretched the story out into a season. The tough part about back then was they had to squish in a long thread of stories from a manga, which they're like this thick, and then like you imagine like a series of manga. Like we need to put this into a movie. So it's like we got 5 books. Let's put it into one movie, and you're always gonna have trouble, right? It's always gonna feel rushed. You try and hit the high points. It's just some trouble, but it is always nice seeing something that was on paper put in the live action. At least back then, it was kind of a good thing to. It was fun to see. So it started off that as a manga, you had those anime short movies. The trouble with those too, in quick history as far as manga goes, manga gets popular. They want to make it into a anime of some sort, and what you run into, the trouble you run into, is that much like Game of Thrones recently, the work it's being based off can't produce fast enough to make up for the speed at which live action can be shot.
Right.
So with Dragon Ball Z, great example. The director's name I forgot, or sorry, the writer's name, the creator, Toriyama, I want to think, but you can correct me. That's totally probably wrong.
Oh,
but
I'm sure someone will.
He was writing, and then it got popular, and they wanted to make an anime, and he wasn't finished with the next part of the story, so they had to stop and make movies that weren't canon. And so there was like an hour, 80-minute long movies that they made up on their own, the animation studio, and they're varying levels of goodness, right? Some of them are just meh, and essentially they happen, but no one recognizes them as being actual canon so they were pretty much just spinning their wheels until he could finish the next book, and then they can make a season out of that next storyline. If I remember correctly, in an article I read, similar thing happened here. They made one movie summarizing what he had written, and then waited till he finished the next part, and then did another movie. But it was early in the 90s. Like I said, it was before the TV anime series started being really popular, especially over here in America. And so this, it was adapted a long time ago. And if anything in the history of this franchise, it was gestating for a long time. Did you look up any information on that, on how long James Cameron's owned the rights to it, and how long it took this movie?
I didn't look it up, but I watched some of the interviews, and I watched him talk with other people, and like his name was really attached to it many years ago. He didn't really have much to do with it now. The more recent, like most of that, I believe, is Robert Rodriguez, which you and I both love him to death. The guy's fantastic. But he kind of, I don't want to say he bailed off the project, but he helped get the project started somewhere around like 2010, maybe like even earlier, maybe '05. Maybe it's been 15 years. I actually can't remember what he said in the interview. But it has been in production for a while, and they just had some issues that they just couldn't get figured out. And there's been like multiple...
He wanted to make 18 Avatar sequels.
I know.
And then everyone was like, James, why? And he's like, I'm retired, kind of. Like, I want to do what I want, make so much money. And everyone's like, you're right. You have made a lot of money. You can do what you want.
Yeah.
Go for it.
But he actually, so it's definitely been longer than 10 years. I'm sorry. I forgot. He actually had an option of doing Alita or Titanic. That's how old this movie is in production.
You could say he went with the right direction with that choice.
Probably, yeah. Alita, yeah, this would have not been probably accepted that well. 15, how old is it? 20 years old? I don't know.
Yeah, as well.
So he probably did go with the right option, but essentially he kept some of the rights to it, obviously, but he kind of let the Robert Rodriguez and the other teams kind of. I don't necessarily know if he took a completely hands-off approach, but I know most of the finalizing of all of this stuff has been without Cameron, which I don't really like because if you look on their titles, if you look, you can't see it, Kevin, but the other guys, the movie watchers, you can see from the wrong point down, Kevin. Down. There you go. From the producers of Titanic and Avatar, right? So basically, like, I hate that they promoted it that way because it should have been a Robert Rodriguez film. In my opinion, that's how they should have promoted it. It should have been Alita Battle Angel, a Robert Rodriguez film. That to me would have just been so much cooler because I like Robert more than I like James Cameron. But essentially,
can you do both? Can you do both?
You could
from the producers of this and director of this. You know,
certainly, yeah. I mean, no one can tell you what you can and can't do, but
I mean, just make it super long. From the producers of Aliens and the director of Desperado, bring you Alita Battle Angel. Like, I'm fine with that. That's fine.
So I imagine the marketing group, the marketing company, pitched several different ideas, and they probably field tested both of them, to be honest with you, and others too. And for some reason, for whatever test or whatever group that they checked or measured, they determined that this would have been the best marketing strategy. Probably because it's easier to say from the producers of Titanic and Avatar, which are like some of the top two grossing movies ever, than it is to say a Robert Rodriguez film. Anyone who doesn't know who Robert Rodriguez is, you're going to lose that. You're going to lose those people. But everybody knows Titanic and Avatar. So I imagine as it got field tested in their marketing group, that's what it is.
Real quick. I'm totally down to go down this path of dialogue with you, but let's go ahead and sum up if we suggest these people should watch this movie, and then we can get into spoilers. So
yeah, go watch it once, go watch it twice.
I watched it twice, 3D Dolby Atmos both times, so 3D Dolby Atmos the second time, and it was really good in 3D.
I watched it in the Dolby 3D the first time and was like blown away. I watched it in 2D regular movie theater the second time, and I was like, this movie is nowhere near as good. Sorry, the movie's great, but you know what I mean? Like, you need to see it while it's in theaters, and you need to see it on the biggest, loudest, coolest screen that you can, because this movie is an experience. Just a regular screen is not going to do this movie justice, and you'll never be able to do it again once it leaves theaters. So this is going to be your last chance.
True. So go watch this movie, enjoy it. It's not without its problems, of course, which we will probably further get into. But if you're into having just an awesome action, lighthearted, it's a different mindset when you go into like an anime type movie or based off an anime product. For me, at least, like there's more silliness, there's more innocence that I'm willing to accept than a normal movie, and we can get into that further. But what I'm trying to say is, like, don't go into this thinking, what's a brutal action movie of recent? Like, don't expect Mad Max, right?
Yeah.
But it is just as action-packed. There's a lot of action to appreciate from both movies, but I feel like the tone of both are very different. So if you go in expecting some, like, awesome, really crazy, brutal, wacky, out there action, this isn't going to be that dark. It is a dark movie as far as, colors, but there is some heart here. There is some innocence. There is some childlike wonder that is present. So if you aren't, willing or aren't expecting that, then you might be a little disappointed if you thought it was just going to be a hard-boiled action film. But visually, it's amazing. Action's awesome. I think a lot of the action performances are great. It's an experience. Go watch it. I'm buying it. That's my endorsement. I'm going to buy it, put it on my wall. You should go watch it. That's kind of my summation of that. So go watch this movie. Speaking of the spoilers.
Go watch it.
Spoilers, warning. So, Travis, let's bring it back to the discussion of what you were finishing up with James Cameron. If I remember correctly, he loved the story, and I think because we had a daughter at the time, if I remember correctly, and I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me for getting a lot of the little details. Either way, he knew the story. He bought the rights to it. long time ago, and it's been gestating. Like you said, he had the choice of Titanic or this movie, and then he went with Titanic. Good call. Made a ton of money. Made him a lot of money. I'm not debating it. Arguably, technology back then would not be able to do what they did with this movie now. Totally right call to hold on and sit on it. But I do like that Robert Rodriguez took over it. Like you said, you and me are big Rob fans. I haven't watched his Spy Kids movies, and I think it would have been interesting to watch those, considering the innocence and the child wonder that I mentioned earlier in this movie, to see like how I handled that. I didn't really want to watch those movies. Nothing against him. I was just like, it's cool.
No, I agree.
Yeah, you can watch it. You can make a kids movie. That's fine. But yeah, this movie, there was a lot of talk about the large eye aspect of this film. And the main character, if you don't know, Alita, is a cyborg, and in the universe of the movie, she has large, big anime eyes. And like, I'm an anime fan, so I was like, cool, I'm down. But I can understand why some people were like, what the hell is going on right now? Am I tripping? Her eyes are the size of like silver dollars. What is going on? I feel it didn't ever take me out of it, the movie. But also, I'm maybe conditioned to having a main character having ridiculous eyes. Here's a side note, Travis, if you ever get into anime. One personal observation I've noticed, and I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there that can be like, duh, Kevin, we knew that was a thing forever. But the main character, or character of innocence in anime, always has big eyes. Like, the pupils are huge. While the character that's not innocent, or more hardened, per se, has dots as eyes. And it's a nice little touch. And it's something that we inherently know from a human perspective. It's why we like puppy dogs so much and little babies, because their eyes are so freaking big. And you have a caricature, you draw their eyes bigger to make them think like they're real sad, right? And we always like, oh my God, this little baby. Like, it's a thing that's been around, but it's interesting that it's a trope. When I say trope, I don't mean it in a negative sense, unnecessarily. Like, there's some tropes that are just industry standards, is a better word for it. In anime, it's very similar. Your main characters are always going to have big anime eyes. In fact, like this, big anime eyes. These aren't proportionate. They shouldn't be this size. But that's just how they kind of like a way to show that for the people who are making these anime shows. So they kind of stuck with it. And from what I remember reading about the manga, is that she had big eyes, and a lot of the other characters commented on her big eyes, but it was part of her personality. The eyes represent that child innocence. And it was a big part of the manga, so keeping that in this film was, I think, a good idea. But I can understand it being hard to grasp, hard to fathom, watching it from the movies that we're used to, right? As far as live actions are concerned. Did it bother you at all? Like, when you watched that first trailer, were you like...
It didn't bother me for a second, and I'm not an anime fan. In fact, it's actually my single greatest criticism against people who criticize this movie. I think first of all, if you're not paying attention, you don't understand. And I think my wife kind of had a similar question about it. So they don't outright tell you, but they sort of kind of do. So you got to kind of pay attention. You need to, like, everyone needs to understand she's from Mars. She's not from Earth. Okay, so she does not look like the humans look. Okay, she's going to look different. They're going to have a different atmosphere. They're going to have different pressures. They're going to have all different kinds of things. And they don't flat out like tell you, because in the movie they don't address, no one talks about her big eyes being weird. No one makes fun of her for it, and maybe that should have been in the movie. I don't know, but I'm fine with it being this way, because essentially one of the first things that I feel as soon as someone says, I don't know what's all the big eyedness, it makes no sense, why is she the only one with big eyes? You know what I mean? Like, as soon as they say that, I can immediately just kind of, no offense, but profile that person into not being what you would call a real movie watcher, because you weren't paying attention. Yeah, because you weren't paying attention. If you were paying attention, then you would know that yes, she's got big eyes, but she's from Mars. She's a Mars berserker. She's an Urn berserker.
United Republic of Mars.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And so they don't need to explain that to me because I'm totally with it. I totally get it. I understand it. There's absolutely nothing outside the ordinary for someone from a different planet to look different.
On top of the fact that she's a cyborg.
That's
And you
also
can
true.
look however the hell you want to look like.
That's also true, yeah.
If you wanted one big eye and one eye to be on your foot, you can do it, and it's fine because you're a cyborg.
Also true.
And and if we're gonna, before we get to the acts, I guess that would be one interesting topic of point, and maybe we could save it for later. But I'll bring it up because I'm already here. I'm already got the wheels rolling. I'm already downhill. It's interesting that a lot of the robot designs, cyborg designs rather, I enjoyed and I liked the varying different kinds. I liked the different customizations. People like different things. But it is interesting to me the cyborgs that were largely closer to 100% cyborg more than 0%, like less human, chose to keep a human face. I know why, practically from a filmmaking standpoint, you want to do that. That so you can I mean, a large part of acting is facial emotion. I mean, also bodily too. But if you get rid of the body, you also probably need to keep the face to kind of allow the actor to do their craft. If you take away everything, that's where things get a little bit weird. It's similar to, I mean, Alita herself. She is fully in that gray, tidy suit with like the face dots and the camera for the like. So her Alita throughout this entire movie is completely CGI.
Like a motion tracking uniform.
Motion capture, Andy Serkis type. Yeah, Andy Serkis type. Yeah, as opposed to probably like Ed Shrikin. I always forget how to spell his last name or say it. Sheeran. Yeah, Skrin. Skrein. Ed Skrin. Screen. Look at his screen. His face was probably shot naturally with like a hole in a suit, I would imagine.
Yeah, probably.
So his face was all him, and then the rest of him was put in a blue suit that they could, or green suit that they could do whatever wacky stuff they wanted. Didn't take me out of it, but it is interesting, right? Like you see the robot, you see that one woman with like pincers and like just complete robot in just face, and you're like, okay, like you know what I mean? Like, like I guess you kept that. And then at one point, spoilers for later, you know, Zapan gets his face cut off, and he seems okay. Like,
no,
seems like not okay for like visually, but he doesn't seem to be dying. He's just like, my face is gone. Like, so it was like a purposely kept up part of his cyborg body that isn't efficient, in my opinion. Like he'd probably just get rid of it and just continue living his life. But like that is part of his personality, is his pretty boy face. So it makes sense for his character. But I don't know. It was just an interesting point that I had with their designs. Even like Growishka, who progressively gets more crazy, wide, and robot-y, still keeps the face. And we know the actor, Jackie Earle Haley, very small man. I don't know how they stretched his face to make that work, but I'm glad. Like he's awesome. Like, you know, he was one of the better performers, I thought, in the movie. But anyways, that was just observation I made. So do we want to go into the story and kind of our general strategy for this episode is going to be to talk about the events of each act and highlight things we want to talk about as we go. Do you want to go ahead and start that, or is there any other extra thing you wanted to talk about? Bring up points, observations?
Nope. Let's begin with the story. To run
through
now that we've wasted their 25 minutes of their time. If anyone's still watching, congratulations. You're awesome. We like you.
Yeah. This is what they're here for, man. They're here for the conversation. Okay, so we start Act 1. Even before Act 1, negative Act 1, with an awesome transition of the 20th Fox logo into the 26th century Fox logo, and then a bunch of darkness on the logo. I appreciated it. If you watch it after rehearing us, look out for it. It's pretty cool. It's a nice little touch. Of course, we're set in the year 2060, 2600. Is it in 38? It's some weird number, right? Like,
don't
either way, it's 2600s. It's where it's set. Or no, actually 2500s because it's the 26th century. Yeah, 25. I'm gonna say 2538. Call me out if I'm wrong. Way in the future, we start off with a giant city in the sky that we later know is called, starts with a Z. I had it earlier.
Zolam.
Zolom.
That's it. Zolam.
Yeah. And a bunch of trash coming out of it into this trash pile. And then we zoom in and we're brought to one of our main characters, Dr. Ido, played by Christoph Waltz, the awesome Christoph Waltz. One of my the actors I'm like, oh yes, he's in this movie. Great. Like, you know, like
Could be a good movie.
Yeah. He's digging around, scrapping for parts, gets an eyeball of one cyborg, and he comes across this bust, essentially a head plus a little bit of the chest area of a robot that he's like, that's weird, enough to draw his eye, and it's right on top of the pile, right? Probably not been there for that long, if we're gonna be honest. We later find out she's like 300 years old, but like recently thrown out at this point, right? She's on the top of the pile, right? Like she's not
like one of the only kind of holes that doesn't really get explained. It'd have been cooler if he was like a junk digger.
Yeah.
You know, and he
and
was
like
diving.
By the way, great setup shot of like the scope of this pile of garbage, right? Like we have in the background, just Batgo's just like sifting through stuff, and he's just walking through here like no big deal.
No,
Stuff can fall on top of my head at any time. Yeah, but I'm fine. It's the break. They're on break. I can walk under here real quick. Whatever. He grabs a bust, or though he scans it, and he realizes there's a live human brain in it. That's fine. Because you're gonna be like, she's from Mars, and they'll be like,
cool.
She's still human. She's still human. She's just not an Earthling. But anyways,
there's less oxygen on Mars, and brains need oxygen, and so she was dumped on Earth where there's more oxygen, which means brains last longer.
That's fine. She also has a heart that can power an entire civilization. Whatever.
All of
she's
Iron
probably
City.
Yeah. So he takes her back. He runs some tests. It turns out that our Dr. Ido is a cybernetic scientist, surgeon. I think it's cybernetic surgeon. He works on people that are cyborgs and performs surgery on them. Kind of like a mechanic mixed with a surgeon. Now they're one job, right? In this future. So he hooks her up to this body that he happened to have. By the way, the body looks dope. It's like ivory with like carvings in it and stuff. It's like, wow, this body's on top. It's a choice body. I don't know the styles of 2500s, but this body looks really dope. Anyways, hooks her up. All of a sudden, she grows hair and eyebrows past this. By the way, she's bald and has no hair on her. During the process of hooking the body up, just hair sprouts. I don't know. I don't know how cyborgs work. Maybe there's just like a mechanism that just makes the hair grow.
No, Dr. Ido put her back together, man. Gave her hair and eyebrows.
I don't know if that's part of the process or not. You know what I mean? Like, it's all Martian tech here. We already know Martian tech's high tech enough to like be malleable and like heal wounds. Maybe when she turned her on, she's like, "Oh, I want my hair back," and it just grew.
Maybe.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Let's go with Ido. We're gonna go with Ido for now.
So he brings her back to life, and we come to the scene that probably touches my heart the most in this movie, and it's a lot of things. We get her waking up. We find out later she has no memories, which is really good watching it a second time, realizing she's waking up with like zero memories, right? How that would seem, right? You're doing one thing, and then you go to sleep, die, and then you wake up. But it's the weird thing with the mind, right? No one really understands it. It does happen where you go through a traumatic event, and you only forget your history, but you don't forget you don't forget English. You don't forget how to be a human, right? But you forget things that your mind's chosen to close off, right? So she knows that she's sleeping. She realizes she can walk. She knows what a mirror is, but she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know what an orange is. We find out later.
Not much later, like 30 seconds later. So
we get essentially what is a character who has a clean slate, doesn't know who she is, and She's just waking up into this world. We get that weird moment where she kind of looks at her hands and she's like, I'm a cyborg. Like, she kind of understanding that, right? And you got to think, like, if you forget who you are, but you realize that these aren't natural hands, at least for a human, how that would trip you out. But we later learn that she's actually like been cybernetic for a lot of her life, so maybe that's less traumatic for her, right? Like, she's like, oh yeah, okay, it's my hand. She get that little like awkward giraffe walking to the mirror, like she falls down, like then she figures it out. And you wonder if like if that was like her high tech tech adjusting to this kind of not high tech Earth body, you know, like maybe it was like, oh, we thought we could 15 meters a second. Turns out we can't. We can only go 5 meters a second.
My brain was calibrated to be an urban berserker, and this whole suit's not working for me.
And so we get a great moment, and it's a great showing of the amazing acting from Rose Salazar as Alita, of having that pure innocence, just kind of like seeing the mirror and like touching it, and just kind of like waking up, like, what's going on? I'm this person, I'm alive, I don't know where I am, and seeing her body and just kind of figuring it all out. I don't know, that scene was awesome. It was a great way to start the film for me, to get me emotionally attached to this character. What did you think of that scene?
I mean, I really liked it because it kind of starts you, like, it essentially starts you as the movie watcher off in the same as this character. Essentially, are two people are starting off at the same place. The character and the person watching the character are both starting off at the same place, which is nobody knows what the hell's going on. And I think that's a good place because you get to learn as the character gets to learn, so you get development as the character gets development, and you feel more attached to this character when you write like that. So I think it's absolutely fantastic that they did it. I also think it's technically sound, meaning that I think it makes complete sense, and I've got no issues, no arguments. Right off the bat, I'm like, okay, I'm buying the whole thing, you know. And yes, Rose Salazar does absolutely beautiful. Her performance is amazing. It's outstanding. So first part of the movie I think is really, really good. And I really like like when they're sitting at the breakfast table, just a few scenes later, and she's like, I don't mean to be rude, but am I supposed to know who you guys are? You know, it's kind of like
right.
this
So she knows
perspective.
enough. Yeah, she knows enough to understand the social awkwardness the situation has, but understands that there's no other way to get past the situation than just say it. It's just interesting kind of character twerk, right? Like, you imagine, like, she's totally not panicking that she doesn't remember anything, right? Like, imagine just waking up and not knowing anything, which you can't because you have memories. But I'm just saying, like, you imagine you'd probably be a little panicked, or at least kind of like, what the hell's going on? Who the hell are you? Why was I in your bed naked, even though I'm cyborg? Um, but yeah, continue.
So, going off what you said, I do not think you would actually be panicked if you woke up somewhere. The only way you would be panicked is if you had something, if you had something normal to compare abnormal to. If you have nothing, then the first thing your brain is going to do is, you know, self-preservation, just create some sort of way to understand what's going on around you, even though you don't understand it. So I actually don't think panic would be the normal reaction. Panic, in my opinion, would only be if you woke up and all you actually had memory to compare it to be like, how did I get from a war on Mars to here? Now that would cause panic.
Technically, they were on Earth.
Well, either way, you know, I'm sorry, I meant the moon. Yeah, the war on the moon to here. You know, like that would cause panic. But having nothing,
Yeah,
is like,
that's fair.
There's nothing to panic about
That's
because
fair.
it's all childlike, and I think they did a fantastic job at the whole probably the first 15 minutes, actually probably like the first 30 minutes of the movie, with her getting to experience, you know, like biting into the orange. Which everyone's probably done at one point or another.
It's great. It's a great moment. And he's just like, so she walks down, and we'll come back to the story. She's like ninjaing down the stairway, and maybe like the first instance of knowing that she has maybe some physical prowess, or she's not a normal cyborg. It's just the way she moves. And I'm not sure if it's Rose acting in this moment. A lot of the times, whenever she shows off like her nimble and acrobaticness, like that one finger push up she does later in the movie. Like, first off, no one probably did that, but I think everything up until the one finger push up, I think someone probably did. Like, I could see someone be able to do those yoga poses that they were doing up until where she lifts her entire body weight with one finger. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But anyways, and she kind of just numbles down, and we have Dr. Ido's assistant. I forgot her name. I don't think they say her name very often in this movie, but she's a nice like a person that Ido looks to just a few times with like for reassurance, and it's nice having her character there, his assistant. But I forgot her name. And she is a welcoming person, so she's like, wake. She's like, the first thing she says is like, good morning, sleepyhead. And then Ido's like, huh? And then kind of looks over and immediately starts analyzing her and like, how's your can you feel this? How any discomfort? How's your fingers working? Gives her the orange, of course, and she doesn't know what it is. She's like, okay, I'll eat it. Because I guess we don't really explain it. She's mainly cyborg, above 90% cyborg, arguably, maybe. Like, I don't. That's a solid number. But she still needs to eat to nourish her brain. I'm like, okay. I don't know what happens inside to let that happen, but I'm fine with her still needing to nourish the brain. Does she need? She can probably just drink a substance, right? That would do it, but whatever. And so she just bites into the orange like it's an apple, which sucks. like just tasting the rind. And of course, the whole time, doctor's like, "This is actually part of my diagnostic test. This is gonna be great." And then she's just like, "Blah, this is gross." And he's like, "The taste receptors are working." And I'm like, "Wow, what a dick! You could have did that when you actually gave her something good to eat. That would have been pleasant." But you're like, "No, I really want to test the negative action to be like, oh, it tastes bad." So that's where we understand that she has no memory. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't even remember what an orange is, which when we later find out that she's from Mars, maybe that makes sense because they probably don't have oranges. so maybe she hasn't lost the entirety of all her life experiences, but she's a clean slate. She doesn't know what's happening. So she poses that question, am I supposed to know who you are? And he's like, I was hoping you could answer who the hell you are because we just met. And that's where we set the story, is that she's a clean slate. She is a person of teenage to maybe young 20s-ish, I guess, mentality who has zero life experience. So he goes about introducing her to this world of Iron City. And the dichotomy of this universe is that there's a big sky city where all the rich people live, and they have dots on their foreheads, a little diamond. Okay.
Whatever.
I mean, if you can afford a diamond to put in your head, I guess you got to live somewhere nice, right? And then Iron City, which is where all the shit from Zalem lands, and that's where their city's built around. They do all the dirty work and support the Sky City. They always send stuff up there. And Iron City is very much like a tough, a town that's just kind of not well off. Like there's a lot of poor people around. They all work for not the factory. What do they call it?
Yeah, they all work for Zalem, basically. Like Ido says it. It's B-roll in the movie, so if you have to be listening rather than watching when he says it. But yeah, everyone in Iron City works for Zalem and makes sure that the rich people in Zalem get to live the way they want to live and have whatever the heck they want to have.
And they're all scraping by, and there's markets, and you can tell this is not like a well-off town, but people are kind of getting by. Then we get like a big military robot that walks around. We just kind of get the idea that they're allowed to live because Zalem says they can, to support their rich habits. It's kind of like the dichotomy that I'm trying to highlight. We go on. She's introducing stuff. She sees a little commercial about Motorball, which she's like, "Oh, that looks awesome. That looks dope, Doctor. We should watch that." And Doctor's like, "No, we can't watch that. Like, I'm being real dadly right now. You can't watch violence. It's not. Let's go do something else." And so there's two interesting like little hints of further character development for both characters in that moment. This is the only reason I brought it up, otherwise I would have not said anything. And they end up going to eat. She's eating a burrito, and they still have burritos in the future.
Yeah.
And
I'm not surprised. They're really good.
They are really good. And he's like, I'll be right back. And then just walks off. This person that just technically came to life not 15 minutes ago, he was leaving her on her own.
He
Whatever.
knows. He secretly knows that she can take care of herself.
Probably, but still. And so she sees a little dog, and we get the first another instance character development of her innocence. Um, and immediately just gives the burrito to her dog, like, "Oh, I'll get the bite. Oh my god, yeah, you're awesome." And right when she's feeding the dog is when a big mech walks up and is like, "Get the hell out!"
Centurion.
Yeah, Centurion. He's like, "Get the hell out of my way!" And she's about to throw down. Like she gets to a battle stance, and she's like about to just go for it. And then dude on a unicycle slash motorcycle walks
Hugo.
up, Hugo, and just tackles her out of the way, and saves her life because I think that robot was going to just run into her. And then she runs back because the dog is still there, and then definitely like runs through the legs and like protects the dog, and then rocks out, right? And he's like, "Oh man, those are some moves, lady. You're awesome." And we get the first introduction of Hugo and Alita, which will be the love interest or the love story of the large majority of this movie. And I will bring up to this point, and I'll get your opinion right now. Based off the trailers, I thought Hugo was going to be really annoying. And I will say, he is not nearly as annoying as I thought he was going to be. But I will also caveat that I feel like he's probably the weakest part of this film. What do you think?
Um, so it's probably the only legitimate argument that anybody has about this movie not being a great movie. I think if anyone says it's not a good movie, I think you just don't believe them. Don't trust that person. That person is full of lies. Um, but to say that it's not a great movie, I can understand how essentially the main male lead, so to speak, Christopher, or is it Christoph? I can't remember.
Christoph.
Christoph Waltz he might be actually the male lead, but either way, um, I really don't think it's that bad. I kind of like his character. He's um, he's not innocent, but he sees the innocence in her, and I think he likes that. Not in a sense that he's in any way trying to corrupt her. Actually, I think he's just trying to get her to experience her innocence at her own pace. Um,
He probably finds it refreshing, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah,
With
I
the way he
imagine.
describes Iron City, he's probably like, "Oh, someone who enjoys life? That's insane. Like,
Yeah,
that's a great person to be around."
right. Yeah, probably a refreshing change, I imagine. Because I mean, as we find out later, he's a jacker. He jacks parts, so he's probably highly into being secretive and highly into kind of the criminal underground, so to speak. It's probably just the above ground in Iron City, but I imagine to see someone with the courage and character of Alita is would be really refreshing to him, or would be like exciting and new to him. So I don't have any particular issue with it all. Is he a fantastic? He's not as good an actor as Rose, not by a long shot. But that doesn't
But
make
those
him bad.
abs, but those abs, bro.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. So there's some male sexism in that scene, but whatever.
It's a real good shape. I'm just giving him
He
props. I'm
is
just
for
like, good
sure.
job, dude.
Yeah, he is. He
Good
is in
job.
good shape. I actually meant to look him up because we know him as a younger actor. I just, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But he's been in stuff before. So I thought he did pretty good in it. I think not maybe not pretty good. I think he did fine. I think he played his role. I think that's exactly what he was supposed to do, and all he was
He
really
said
supposed to do was give way for Rose.
he was in Nashville. I didn't watch that, so I don't. I'm just letting you
I
know that's
like
one of
watched
his.
parts of it or something. I don't really know.
That's fine. Whatever.
Um,
Anyways, continue.
but yeah, I mean, I think he did fine. I don't really, you know, if his intention was not to be, a multi movie character, if they knew that he was going to die in this, then they would have chosen an actor to play a role specifically to fulfill the entire purpose, not just the purpose you see in the beginning of the movie or the middle or the end.
Yeah, and you can argue at this point: do we believe this love story in its entirety? Do we believe that? And it's a movie trope that's been out there for a while. It's a story trope. Uh, a woman, you know, has no experiences, and she falls in love with the first person she meets, right?
Well, the handsome bad boy, yeah.
And that didn't bother me in much sense. I guess maybe it's just because I'm used to this kind of vibe of story. But I will say, I don't. It. I didn't not believe them being in love. It might have been a rush to get there, but I do think there's chemistry there. I just think some of the choices that the character of Hugo makes later in the movie is what I think makes him the weaker part of this movie, where it just kind of like doesn't make sense to me. But we can discuss that later. I want to rewind because I missed a great scene where Dr. Ido takes her outside and she's all like, "Oh my God, it's the outside. This is crazy. The world's so bustling." And she almost gets run over by a car. And she's like, "Well, I don't have a name." And he's like, "Alita." And then you see him look at the nurse, at his assistant, and she's like, "Really? All right, cool, doc. That's interesting." And she's like, "Oh my God, I love it. Can I keep it?" And like hugs him. And then we get another good scene of her innocence. I just want to beat that because we're going to bring it up later, like character development for Dr. Ido. I wanted to highlight that. So she meets Hugo. She's only slightly thirsting over him at this point, right? Like a healthy thirsting, not like
Barely,
crazy
actually.
thirsting, but enough thirsting. We're like, all right, okay. Like if you saw me have that kind of thirst, you'd be like, all right, Kevin,
Well,
what's going
yeah,
on?
okay, so in those of you single gentlemen watching this, you know that whole when women say like, "Oh, we haven't felt a spark," whatever, like, "Oh yeah, there's just no spark there." Um, okay, well, Alita found the spark like instantly. She had her spark. First of all, I don't believe it a spark. I don't even know what the heck that actually is. It's not tangible or measurable or negotiable either. It's just a
for
thing
for
someone made up. But
for a gearhead talking trash about sparks, what about spark plugs, bro?
yeah, well, those are measurable and tangible and testable and fixable and replaceable. So, but
You
anyway,
can say
yeah.
all that
So
about relationships. That's all I'm saying.
that's
Continue.
that's like all there is. Like to me, there's a big difference between a spark and thirsting. I
She
think
does
thirsting
get
is like stage three clinger. That's what thirsting sounds like to me.
when she hops up in the windowsill with her new body and she's just watching them
Oh,
sleep.
she's
She was
full
thirsty as
on
hell,
stage
right?
five, full on stage five clinger right there. Just
When
creeping
like if I
everybody
woke
out.
up, when I woke up, like he wakes up and he doesn't get freaked out, I'd be like, yeah, I probably wouldn't either. It's pretty hot. Just be like, what's up? Did you jump up? I live on the 80th floor.
Right?
Bet you jumped up here in one bound, didn't you? Just one jump. You got up here. But anyways, um, so they have that meeting. We already can tell this is going to be the love story. This is the tropiest. I think this movie, the tropiest thing in this movie is probably that the beginning of that love story and the way it progresses, or the fact that it progresses so quickly. Rather,
Yeah.
um,
For her.
yeah. So she's like, "Who is he?" And Dr. I was like, "Oh, that's Hugo. He's a hard worker," and that's kind of all he says. And then we move back and we go to Sleepy Town. She's about to like pass out, and we see her watch Dr. Ido go out at night. Sorry, come back from being out at night, and his arm's bleeding. And she's like, immediately like, "This is real weird. That's not normal." And then we flash back to the next day where he has like a big bandage over his arm, right? And she's like, "That's crazy." And then we meet this patient of Dr. Ido's. Uh, we already see him fixing another person, but whatever. So this person has gotten jacked. His like all his legs and arms have been taken from him, and this is a common crime that's been happening in the town. And he's pissed off. He's like, "Yeah, they came and jacked me. It's real crappy." And Ido's just trying to help out as much as he can. And also, we learned earlier in the scene, like he doesn't take money for. That's how she got the orange. A dude paid him in oranges, so like that's kind of the doctor trope of like he's doing it for just the sake of doing it and being happy to be there for people. He's not trying to make money off of it. So here he mentions the patient who's gotten jacked. Mentions like, "Oh yeah, didn't you hear about that dude who or that lady got murdered? That person that keeps murdering all these cyborgs? It's pretty crazy, right?" And Dr. Ido does the dad thing, like, "Shut up, there's a kid in here." Like, just like, don't expose her to the real world stuff, bro. I'm trying to raise a kid here. She's only a day old. What are you doing here?
A day
Uh,
old.
And there's a nice little touching scene of why I like the assistant, because he's like, give me the corkscrew or whatever the hell he's asking for. And Alita just kind of looks at the nurse like, I don't know. And she's like, that one. And she's like, oh, okay. And like, it's just a nice little like scene. But we learned that there's someone that's killing cyborgs. And this is Alita, from Alita's perspective. There's someone killing cyborgs. And my doc, who knows everything about cyborgs, came home with a bloody arm. Interesting coincidence that's happening. Her mind's already churning. As well, ours should as well at that point, right? Like at that point, we should be like, interesting. So she goes out on her own this day, if I remember chronologically the events that happened, but only doing it to highlight some important events. She gets stopped as she's leaving to go hang out with whoever by a woman with a dot on her head, a little jewel, who is Jennifer Connelly, and she grabs her arm, and she's like, "Hey, kid," and then she's like, "Huh?" and then looks at her arm and is just like really fascinated with the work of her shoulder, like her body, and she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you so weird?" And then just kind of leaves, and then we get a shot of Dr. Ido, who's been watching from his perch window, looking down on on Alita walking away, and we get a shot of Jennifer Connelly's character, whose name is, let me look it up because I want to get it right.
Jennifer Connelly. Did
I
get
Kristen. Kieran. Is it Kieran?
I don't remember.
Chiren.
Sure.
Chiron.
Kyron?
Let's go with that.
Whatever.
I forgot. Jennifer Connelly. We're calling her Jennifer Connelly from now on. She has a pleasant walk with Dr. Ido. Turns out that they were married at one point. Their daughter was terminally ill. Not terminally.
No, she's paralyzed.
Right, and she wanted a body. So it turns out that Alita's body is the body of his daughter. Not only is the body that Alita has his daughter's body, her name is Alita as well. So he gave her the name of her daughter. So now we get some character development dump of Dr. Ido. Like, oh, okay, this seems like a daddy thing here. Like he's just trying to replace his daughter. Who Chiron comments about, like, oh, you're trying to just get rid of our daughter, like trying to get over it. And they have a little thing where like, well, you should have gotten over it, right? And it turns out that she's trying to recruit him to work with her. We don't know yet what, but like it seems kind of shady. So he's like, nah, bro, I'm not about that life anymore. She walks away into a shady car with like the futuristic version of suicide doors. And then we get a great shot of Mashahara Ali's character, Vector, who I will at this point say, hands down, the best wardrobe I've seen in a long time.
The shaft comes out. The shaft's going to destroy it.
Everything he wears is so choice. It is awesome. Yeah. And he gets that great thing where like he's like kind of sitting normally, but then she walks in and he knows the decision that Dr. Ido made and just does this kind of like with like glasses on. Right. I'm like, you're such a good actor. I love you so much. And the door shuts and he drives away. And I believe at this point, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think Alita goes to chase after Hugo because she's getting that thirst level going on right now. She's really getting into it. And she finds that they're playing the street version of Motorball, which we had learned about earlier. And I've seen both versions. They seemed really tame, if I'm honest, comparatively to the professional level. But they're like rolling up half pipes and slamming balls, and it looks real fun. And she's into it, right? Like immediately, she's like, "Oh my god, can I play?" He goes like, "Oh, what's up, Lita? What are you up to?" And like, she's like, "Oh, can I play?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's cool, yeah." And so she puts on her skates, and I guess they're motorized inline skates, essentially, is what it is.
Pretty sweet.
I don't really understand the sport at all. I don't think they give us enough to really understand it. I don't know if there's teams or if it's just individual, but whatever. So she starts to play. Of course, she falls down, and everyone's like, haha, new guy. Like, what a dweeb. And she finally starts getting the hang of it, and she steals the ball finally, right? And she's like, oh, new girl's got the ball. And just gets demolished by this Afro kid who just, like, shoulder checks her and just takes the ball. And I'm like, she's a cyborg. She's fine, right? Health-wise, she's good. Do they do this to everyone? Like no one has helmets in this sport. And they seem to be like really going at it. Go ahead.
Like it's actually kind of funny because like 10 minutes earlier in the movie, when Hugo goes to help her stand up from a seated position, he's like, "Whoa, you're really heavy." Oh, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, it's like, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, in my opinion, it's like kind of silly writing, but whatever. I don't necessarily know why it's in there because everybody knew that Alita was just about to destroy him in 5 seconds anyway, which she totally does, righteously so. Um,
Yeah,
so I'm not really sure
that's,
why it was there. I didn't really care for it because I knew he was about to get his ass kicked. So
he does, and it's so good. Like she like rips it from him, spins him around,
kicks his skate. That's
then
kind of the cool
kicks his
part.
skate, and then like shoulders him away, like just like a combo, like a Street Fighter combo, like bap bap bap
Yeah.
bap 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 bap, and it's like
Oh, you
eight
can.
combo, and she goes and slams the ball, and everyone's like, "Oh shoot, bro!"
And then he's
And
all offended.
yeah, Hugo walks up,
I
is
don't get it.
like trying to help him
No,
up.
no,
He's
no,
like,
no.
"Man, why'd you bring your girlfriend around?" He's like, or some stupid stuff. Like he's
Yeah.
like, "What?" Like, "Oh, that was messed up." He's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry she embarrassed you so thoroughly." And I'm like, "Yeah, you did. She freaking embarrassed you, bro." And it was fun. But earlier in the scene that I missed, when we heard the news of the person killing cyborgs, Dr. Ido was very dadly here and was like, "I want you in before sunlight every day. You need to report at 6 p.m. And if you don't, I'm gonna be real mad." He
Literally
can't
not
do.
how it happens.
He really can't do much. I'm just summarizing what he said. He's
Yeah.
like, "You
He
need to be
says,
in."
"Be home by dark."
Yeah. So she's with Hugo. He's starting to get into her. She's starting to get into him. Things are sparking. It's probably her cyborg body, but who knows? It could be natural sparking. We don't know at this point. So she is like, "I need to get home, bro." And he's like, "Well, you want to take a ride with me?" And she's like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll ride on your unicycle." And he gets on his unicycle, which is what it is. Like, that's what it is. It sounds stupid, but that's what he rides.
It's a really cool unicycle. I don't even know
Which
why
is
we're explaining it. I'm sure everyone watching this has seen the movie at least once.
and he's like, I forgot why they got into the food moment here, but she's like, "Yeah, my favorite food is the oranges," and she's like, "We gotta correct that right now," and then just pulls over and gives like the biggest bar of chocolate I've ever seen in my life. This thing is like an inch and a half thick. Like,
Yeah, I'd have
Jesus, you
diabetes from like one bite.
warm up to chocolate. Don't just like give her the freaking world's reserve. Jesus, like, and she bites it, and like just the little touches from Rose has the face of pure and utter joy when she bites into this chocolate bar, and it's just like, "Oh my god, I have a new favorite food," and you believe it. You believe it in your heart. You're like, "Yes, she's selling this." There's just little bits from Rose and the amazing acting job that she did in this movie of selling that this person didn't know what chocolate was, and now she does know what chocolate is, right? Like, just the
Definitely
little things.
so.
They drives home, and at this point, yeah, yeah, uh, she sneaks in, and then Dr. Ido wakes up somehow and was like, "Where the hell were you?" And she's like, "She's lost track of time, bro. What's wrong, man?"
What's the big deal? I'm a teenager.
You know, but yeah, she doesn't say that yet, but that's the vibe, right? She's like, "Why is this such a big deal?" So she has kind of like a I owe him something, so I should probably be polite and kind of live by his rules, but really kind of like, why do I care what you think at this point, right? Like, I'm a freaking cyborg, but and he's kind of, he doesn't get too mad. He's just like, "You should be in before. Here, eat something. You need to feed your brain." She's eating potatoes or something. We don't get to see her opinion on potatoes or the good food that seemed like she was about to eat, but I'll forgive this movie. I would have been interested. You just had all you've had is oranges and chocolate. Now you get to taste potatoes and meat. Let me know what you think. Anyways, I don't. As was it at this point in the movie where she asked what he was doing? Um,
Yeah, it's she asks him right before he gets food, and then he pulls the plate out of that version of a warmer or microwave or whatever that
Maybe the
thing
hell
is
it is.
called,
Whatever.
and sets the food down. He says, "Come on, you need to," you know what I mean? Like he essentially halfway changes the subject.
Yeah, it just
Um,
blows up. Yeah,
but basically, the very next scene is her just laying in bed, awake.
wide awake with those wide eyes, just
Yeah, I
like
know. And then
like an owl.
she hears Ido kind of coming down the wall, trying to be quiet, And then we see her go to the window, and we see Ido walking down the street. Of course, she follows. Why not follow? Makes total sense for a curious little newly developing brain, so to speak. Slash,
At
I
the
don't even know.
at this point in life, you're the most curious, and she is
Right.
completely exercising that. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's definitely wondering what's going on. A part you missed, Kev, earlier in the movie. I hate going back, guys. I'm sorry that we missed this part. Uh, Whenever she's eating the burrito, playing with the dog, she catches that flyer that flies into her that explains
Mm.
someone's killing the women, and there's like 20,000 mulong or whatever the heck it is, $20,000 for whoever catches that person. And so she's got multiple things going on in her head that are like, my father leaving every night is questionable. Coming back with a bloody arm, like, what's really going on here? And part of me actually was convinced that he might have actually been killing women at night. Um, I didn't. I never really connected the fact that Ida would be the one kidnapping or taking the parts off of these other androidians, these other robot people,
Cyborgs.
cyborgs. But I did. Part of me actually did believe that Ida was the one killing the women for a second. Because the bloody arm is like a sheer giveaway. Like if he'd have just came back at night with no bloody arm, I'd have been like, he could have been doing a number of things, but he came back with a bloody arm, and not like a little blood. Like he was in a fight, and that says
Ye
something.
of little faith. I never
No,
once
I
doubted
just don't know what
faults.
direction is going.
Never
It's,
doubted him
it's
in my
not
life.
faith.
He's never been a bad guy except for Inglorious Bastards, in which he was a
The best bad guy ever.
reasonably, slightly pleasant bad guy until you recognize
very
he's not.
racist bad guy. Yeah.
Then you're like, okay, yeah, actually, you're a really bad guy. But anyways,
Yeah. So go ahead.
so she follows her dad, wondering what the hell's going on the rooftop. She's like, what's going on? What's going on? We get Red Riding Hood, which was I don't know if like vulnerable woman has to be wearing a red hood is like a trope in our culture at this point, but or they were purposely trying to mimic that or call back to it. But we have a woman in a red hood who's walking around all scared, just like, oh, what was that? What was that? And he's like shailing her, and it's totally setting up that he's the person that's killing him, right? Which at this point, you should probably start realizing it's not him, just from how much they're spoon feeding it to you. And she's about to walk down this pathway of an alley. He puts his weapon together, which is essentially a rocket hammer, which is cool as hell. It's a hammer. It's like a pickaxe with like a jet on the other end, right? To like fully get that swing going. And he's about to like totally like knock this lady out, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, he's the one's killing women. That's what's going on right now." And Lita thinks the same thing, so she stops down. She's like, "Stop!" And he's like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And he turns around the corner, and no one's there. And he's like, "It's a trap." Which is like, all right, yeah, I guess it might be a trap. I don't know. Like he's been doing this business a long time.
I actually don't think it's a trap, but what do I know?
I mean, it ended up being a trap, but I don't understand how he got to
just
that.
ruins it, actually.
So we all of a sudden hear this one cyborg walk up, and he's all about like, "Oh, we finally got the hunter killer." That's what they call him, right? Hunter is the hunter killer. Are you sure?
Yeah, hunter warrior.
Okay.
Sorry,
hunter warrior. Yeah, that's right. It's like, oh, we got the hunter warrior here, and then we get Garushka, who's just wearing this sizable coat that covers his entire huge body, which I don't know how he got that, but it's fine.
Or why?
It just makes him look ominous, bro.
If you're 15 feet tall, we know you're a cyborg.
15 feet wide. Then you don't need a jacket. And
I'm cloaking in.
So it turns out like these are the people that we learn. I think it's during this conversation we learn that these are the people that are killing the female cyborgs.
Yep.
And they laid a trap for Dr. Ido in particular.
Yeah.
And I believe at this point we learned that the Red Riding Hood was a wolf in sheep's clothing.
She was the trap.
Yeah. And she busts, she's about to kill Dr. Ido, and he's like, run, Alita. And so we get a great shot of her running.
Yeah.
And you're like, running. And then she just drop kicks the first dude in the freaking face, and then just punches him. Just like, just that famous punch where you're just like,
smashes his face in is what she does.
Right. And I'm not even sure if it's like efficient to do that. Like is it better to just keep doing rights or just switch from left? I don't know. But she just like pelts his face in the paste. And I wish, that's one of my criticisms of the movie. I wish it was rated R, so I could have saw all that in his glory. But it's fine. Punches this robot dude in the face until he's dead, and everyone's like, "Whoa!" I mean, Grishka, whoa, Scissor Lady, whoa, Ido, like, holy shit! Like, he's just like, everyone's like, "What the hell just happened?" And Grishka's like, "Oh, well, this one's got fight in her. Oh, that's kind of, it's nice to see you Flea fighting or whatever." And he tells his peon to go fight her. And so she takes her clothes off, and she's largely cyborg, just has like mantis hands, like mantis blades.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a good fight with them, just like going at it. Alita never really ever gets trouble in that particular fight, and it shortly dispatches her pretty quickly. Like,
she does, actually, no. There's like 3 or 4 times actually where she gets put on the ground.
She doesn't get cut, which is the main threat.
Doesn't, yeah. She gets like kneed up against the door. That's like the first one. And then she gets dropped somehow, and then she's like rolling to escape the little jabs, and then she gets thrown against the wall. But then that's Alita's like, oh, okay, fatality moment right here.
we get to a point where she kicks her against the metal door, like just bam, and then we hear the enemy, rather, I forgot her name, Mantis Lady, gets pushed up against the wall, and then gets followed up by Alita just running immediately after she initiated that move, and just flying kick to the face, and then it gets embedded into the metal wall. We get a great shot of the rest of her body just falling as her head stays up into the wall. It's like, damn. So, summary of the scene is that Alita is well more capable than we thought she was. Unless you watch the trailers, in which case you're probably like, yeah, I knew this was coming. So that's when Grishka pulls off his jacket. We learn that's Jackie Earle Haley, who's been times 10 his size because he's a very small man. Love him to death. I think he does a great job as being a creepy-ass Grishka. And you have a little fight scene where Grishka's a lot bigger and he's a lot more threatening, but Alita seems to be handling herself very well, just being quicker, right? I'm going to be quick. And she does this battle yell kick that targets the weak joint of his shoulder and separates it from his body. During that moment, we get a flashback of her fighting on the moon with someone that's like trying to help her, like, we got to do this thing, get up, we got to go. And we repeat the kick right after that, where she's like, ah, and just like knocks his shoulder off. And the Grishka's like, oh, I'm not about this life, I'm about to leave, and then heads out. And then Dr. Ido's like, wow, that was crazy. That was a lot. We got to download all that. That was a lot happened. They go back home. She learns that he's a bounty hunter, essentially, and he's been doing it for a while. And he goes to get the bounties because he takes the 2 heads of the robots that Alita killed. By the way, false advertising or some version, right? Because Alita killed him. He didn't, but whatever. He gets the money for it. He essentially says, like, I've been doing this for a while. This is why I can keep the clinic open. This is why I don't charge money. There's no police in Iron City anymore ever since the fall. The big event, right? That's the thing that's happened for a while. There was a big event called the Fall where all the Sky Cities got destroyed except for Zalem, and everyone crowded into this Iron City that was left. So this is a quagmire of different people surviving that the events of the Fall have come to Iron City. So that's why they're so impoverished. There's so many of them in such a small city. And for whatever reason, Zalem's only Sky City didn't fall. So they're the police force now, people they pay to be enforcers. We already met Zapan earlier, but we didn't mention him. He was just like this edge screen, just walking around in his awesome body with an awesome sword. Not important. But that's where we get the story of, like, does he explain at this point about his dead daughter? I can't remember if he tells her the story now.
Yeah.
So it turns out that Dr. Ido had been a motorball mechanic and had made people bodies to compete in motorball, which is a lucrative business, apparently. And he had upgraded one gentleman who needed drugs for whatever reason. Like, I guess he got messed up. And so he's in his, this particular individual broke into Dr. Ido's base of operations, looking for drugs, couldn't find him. Dr. Ido's like, what the hell are you doing here, bro? And he's like, well, I'm crazy. I'm a crazy robot dude. And then just like brushes Ido away. And then just apparently we see behind him Alita, Dr. Ido's daughter, who's paraplegic in a wheelchair,
No,
and then
Quandra.
just
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry. Continue.
and just like I guess murders her by running through her. Like we don't
Yeah.
really get to see it happen. Either way, the important thing is that the reason he stopped helping out with Motorball is that he created a demon of his own making that ended up killing his daughter, and he'll never do it again. And he went out to kill that particular individual for the murder of his child. And the way he did that was becoming a hunter
Warrior.
warrior to do it legally. And then since then has been kind of just kept doing it like as a responsibility for the demon he created. So we get some good character development of Dr. Ido in this moment, which I liked. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, you learn
I'm
all
all
of his motivation,
Yeah.
in the moment, which tells us who he is, where his lanes are, where he stays, and where he doesn't stay. But it also tells us his talents, his capabilities, and it's actually also foreshadowing. But
So we just find out that Alita is named after his daughter. She finds that out. We find out that the body that she has was supposed to be his daughter's body. There's an awesome line where she's like, "Well, you made fast legs." Like, she never got to use them. He's like, "Well, you made fast legs," right? Like, we find out that she died. And so Alita at this point is like, "Well, I got a memory from fighting, so I want to be a hunter warrior like you, so I can trigger these memories." Because apparently, 100% of the time at this point, the way I get memories back is by fighting. And he's like, "No, I'm a dad. I can't let you do that. I'm being a dad right now. You can't do that. It's too dangerous." And she's like, "Well, it's not really your call, bro." And just kind of like they ended the confrontation, essentially. And I don't think it's this moment. Yes, it's probably like the next day. Alita goes to vent to Hugo, who she's thirsting after, in case you forgot. And it's like, "Oh my god, my dad's being so overbearing." And Hugo's like, "Well, you can live by his rules or your rules? By the way, we're at Motorball." And we're like the front row of Motorball, and we get to see this awesome action of just people getting torn apart, chasing the ball, half pipes, obstacles, like more sleek design cyborgs and cyborgs that look like a truck, essentially, just like motorized. It's insane. Like the action's insane. And he's kind of like, "Yeah, this is awesome. If you win, you get to go up to Zalem. By the way, that's my life's about, is trying to get to Zalem. That's all I'm about. I know the pit crew. You want to go meet the pit crew?" What's the actor's name? I'm going to remember it. He's Australian. He was in Suicide Squad. I'm going to keep scrolling until I find
I'm
him.
going to call it like Courtney or something like that. Jai
Courtney.
Yeah.
In this movie for all of 30 seconds, because she's like, "Well, who do you think's going to be the champion?" He's like, "Jai Courtney, dude. He's probably going to do it." And he's like, "You need to adjust my left cylinder. We had really rough right turns earlier." And that's essentially his entire part of this movie.
Yeah.
And that's where Sheeran and Vector are like, "Alita's here. Holy crap. We really need to get her. We need to get her body again." I think we missed this. Yeah, I think we missed the scene where Gruishka came back all beat up, like, "Oh my god, Ido's freaking cyborg kicked my ass." And then we get a scene introducing the main bad guy of this movie. Forgot his name. It's not Vector. It's Nova. Nova, who can take over people's bodies. So we get to see Mashallah Ali act like a shady underground person that he does so well, but also as a white guy. He gets to act in this movie.
As a really rich white guy with lots of power.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. With blue contacts.
Yeah.
And Nova's like, "I really want Alita. I really want Alita." Flashback to where we're currently at, where they're like, "Oh, Alita's over there." And Hugo or Vector is like, "Oh yeah, we really need to get her." Just kind of like casually looks over with his glasses, like, "Oh yeah, that's her." Hugo needs to bail. We don't know why. But we do it from the events of the Motorball incident. There was one particular gentleman in the race who had like this like augmentation where like his nails could shoot off like scorpion style and like stab a dude. And then Bashar Ali, Vector, is like, "I need that." And then Sharon's like, "I could use that." and because there was an underhanded deal between Sheeran and Nova to get Alita.
Yeah, so
That
Vector actually says that this guy's screwing up the odds. He's winning too much, and his weapon is making him too powerful. He's screwing the odds up. And Vector's all about running the motorball games.
yes,
we find out later that he generally believes this is the top of living in Iron City, which essentially is the world. There is nothing left other than Iron City and Zalem, and this is the top of living, in Iron City. So he's like all about the motorball games, and he wants to make sure the odds are good because he needs people betting because he wants to make money. So
yeah,
he sends Sheeran after the. Oh yeah, and then Sheeran's like, yes, I could use that, which ultimately we all know is for Garishka.
Because she has to deal with Nova. Because Nova took over Vector's body to do an underhanded deal with Sheeran. Okay, now we're up to date.
Yeah.
So it all works out. She's like, oh, he's doing some, he's ruining the odds. I could use his hand just for some stuff I'm doing, some homework. It's fine. And he's like, okay. And so Hugo leaves to go do something. And then he's like, can you get home, Alita? And it's already dark at this point, right? So I guess she doesn't care about the rules anymore. And so we leave, right? We meet the winner of the event who had the claw hands, the scorpion hands. He has like 80 women on him.
3, but okay.
A lot. More than I'm used to, I guess. Maybe that's why I'm
more than either one of us could handle.
And he's all like, oh yeah, I'm just the best. I'm the best. And then these two dudes on bikes just run at him.
It's so fun.
And that's why the girls leave, right? And so they have a chain, and they try to attack him, and then he just like stands there, and they fall off their bikes. But it seems that was part of the plan.
Yeah.
Like they were like, yeah, we nailed our part, because he gets shocked by some other people. Essentially, he's getting jacked by those jackers that we mentioned earlier in the movie. They jack his hand. They're like, oh my God. Or, no, sorry. They paralyze him, bring him to a truck. The truck comes to a shady alley where we see Vector in an awesome suit with that black like sash down the side. Yeah. Oh God, this is awesome. He just says awesome clothes in this movie. And he is like, hey, and he meets with like the head jacker. Turns out head jacker's Hugo. Hugo's jacking parts, bro. And they take the part from him. They give it to Sheeran. The bracer gets killed by Vector, right? So that's like the biggest plot point of this current part of the show. I'm going to pause because I need to go to the restroom. So this will be a cut. The point is they go to this lake. In this lake, there's a ship. They explain that what caused the fall was this confrontation between Earth and URM, URM, the United Republic of Mars. I believe that's what the acronym stands for. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it's an URM ship, and they're like, people keep trying to steal from it, but no one knows how the technology works because Mars' technology was way advanced than ours. And she's immediately like, we need to go to the control center. And everyone's like, yeah, like, all right, cool. And she's just like, we need to go there. And they're like, well, it's underwater, bro. We can't really do that. And she just jumps in water. It had to be great for them. Everyone's like, okay. And so she would get the Indiana Jones part of this movie, if there ever was one. Walks to the ship. Everyone's dead. She seems to know her way around this part of, or this kind of vessel. And she does this there's like a handle. She pulls out, pushes in, and then this door opens, and it's like this giant orb of like wavy material surrounding something. And then she just walks up, and she's kind of like looking around, and she just like subconsciously raises her right hand, and like this little keypad pops up, and she's like, huh? And then I like this little touch where she like, there's 3 passwords, right? I don't know if you noticed that. There's da-da-da, then one unlocked, da-da-da, and then another one unlocked, and then a third one. I was like, okay, 3 passcodes, let's save. White bubbly thing, or sorry, purple weird bubbly thing falls down. There's a body there, a cyborg body, and immediately she's like, dope. And so she grabs it, walks back out, and like a scene like if she's saving someone from death, just like out of the water with the body in her hands. And everyone's like, oh wow, that's crazy, that's weird. How does she know what that is? And so we don't really have much ramp. Like afterwards, when she gets out of the water, we don't get to stay with that moment for a while. She just takes it down. Like immediately she goes back to Idaho. We don't get any of the conversation of driving all the way back from not civilization to civilization, but whatever. Like, so we get back. Idaho's just like, yeah, this thing's pretty dope. And she's like, I have a connection with this. I knew what that ship was. This must be what I am. And so we get some nice like little background story from Dr. Ido talking about how this is a berserker body. It's like the most high tech of all um, battle tech of ever. It was from Mars. That was 300 years ago. That died with them when we defeated them. No one knows how to work this. They were so far advanced that even today we don't know what this stuff does or how it functions. But this is a berserker body made for war, and I'm not going to put it on you because I'm being a dad right now. And then it's just like, what the hell, dude? This is me. This is what part of me. This is clearly I have a connection with this stuff. I want to be this. This is me. This is what I want to be. And Dr. I was like, I'm never doing it again. My daughter died. Demons. I just can't do it. Can't do it. And so she's like, well, I'm out of here. And then she leaves. And I think, is this where the first arc of this story ends? Of this movie? Is it the presence of the body, or when she gets the body installed?
Yeah, this is probably the end of the first arc right here. Right, this is the setup. Everything up until this point sets us up for the confrontation, which is about to happen.
Right. So she finds a super high-tech body that clearly her heart, which can power the entire Iron City, which is a bit that Iron mentions. It was completely made for her. She's made for interfacing with this body that is apparently the most high-tech weapon ever. But he's like, nah, bro, I'm not going to put you on here. And so that's the first arc. So was there anything that you want to cover in the first arc that we glossed over before we move on to the second arc? Any thoughts? Are you okay with that?
Great. I think the only thing, it's not even a criticism because I know the movie was not written to tell this part of the story. The movie was written to leave us in mystery about her role before who we know her to be, right? The whole point was to get little flashbacks of her fighting a fight on Mars, sorry, on the moon, between and Earth. Like that's the mysterious part of the movie. So I wanted to know more about that, but it's not a criticism. I know that this movie was not written to tell me that information. It was just to hint at it to me so that we can kind of have, this is an origin story essentially. And hopefully if we get a sequel, and I think we will, then what we'll have is the backstory that we're looking for in this one. So I'm totally fine with it. I think the first act is good. No troubles, no worries for me.
Yep. So Alita going full anti-establishment, anti-parent, grabs a black duster from I don't know where, but it looks dope as hell on her, and walks into the office to become a hunter warrior officially with Hugo. Gets a little ID and walks Willie to this bar called Kansas with a duster, just and looking dope as hell. Like, all right, Alita, you look cool. You know what you're doing. Yeah. So she walks into a bar with a bunch of hunter warriors, and essentially, if you remember, they're all bounty hunters. And she knows that Grishka's after Ido. He's gonna come back eventually, which we kind of been talking about up until this point. And she wanted the body to help out with Ido and become a hunter warrior, but again, Ido was being a dad. And so her plan now is to go appeal to all the hunter warriors to group up and go after Grishka, because technically Grishka's a murderer. Grishka did have a bounty on his head, but for whatever reason does not have a bounty on his head anymore. And that's where Ido and Alita kind of come to the conclusion that he's being protected by someone. So it goes deeper than normal, than we thought. This plot thickens, essentially, is what happens. So she walks in the bar, and we get our introduction to Zapan, played by Ed Skrein, who's a great bad guy. Just a great, deplorable, horrible bad guy. He does it so well. And so Zapan starts hitting on Alita, like, oh, new fish, all right, what are you doing in here? And she's like, I'm a hunter warrior. He's like, oh, we got a rookie in here. And we get the awesome scene of most movies where we're introduced to every bad guy and all the things they do. We're introduced to Johnny Tran from Fast and Furious, who's now a cyborg. We're introduced to Screwhead, which is an awesome name. We're introduced to the dude who has cyborg dogs, who's an actor who's always, always in Robert Rodriguez films. And he's kind of like, and I'm Japan, and I got the blade. I'm the keeper of the blade of Cascadia, or something, some stupid, like just
some comic book name.
He just like as if there's a hum or something in the light that shines as he pulls it out, and then he mentions it's really really sharp, and she's like, "Where'd you?" Like she immediately is like, "You didn't earn that. Who'd you kill to get that?" And he's just like kind of glosses over the fact that whatever. And he's just kind of explaining, like, we're gonna, like, I don't normally take a rookie under my wing, but I might make an exception for you. And she like brushes him off. And we have this awesome dialogue with Alita, because Alita has gone full badass at this point, where she's like, there's some great lines, and I'm gonna paraphrase them, but I've already forgotten like the exact lines, but they're so awesome. Where she's like, well, how well, you spent so much money to keep that face pretty, or something like that, just commenting on the fact that his face is pretty, and every like Hunter Warrior's like, oh, just like, you got owned, dude. And he's like, do you want to throw down right now? And she's like, well, you would mess up your hair. And everyone's like, oh, damn, Japan. And then he like just goes to like choke her, and then she counters and slams his face into a freaking table, and then kicks him into a wall. No, he draws his first, if I remember correctly. He's like, oh yeah, we're about to get serious. And she like blocks him and like kicks him into a wall after breaking his nose, and then like kicks his blade up and like kicks it towards the wall, and it almost stabs him, but like goes to the left. And he's like, you broke my nose. And she's like, yeah, I did. And so this sets up like, all right, I mean business. And so she's like, starts to be like, here's before that moment, I already ruined it, sorry. She has a speech. She's like, 100 warriors, we need to gather together. We need to beat Grishka. He's coming after me and Ido. I'm going to challenge you to join me in forces so we can beat Grishka. And that's when Zapan's like laughs, and everyone laughs, and everyone's like, you're stupid. And then that's when he really starts talking trash. Sorry about getting that chronologically incorrect. So she shows she's badass, and then she gets like real mean, and she's like, all I see here are a bunch of wasted scrap. You guys all suck. You guys are pathetic. And I was like, okay, all right, Lita. And hops up on the table with like 2 no names. And just like pretty much just like, if anyone can beat me right now, I forgot like what the ultimatum was. She was like just gonna like give him money or something, make it worth her while to fight her.
Yeah.
And she just has a bar fight. We have this awesome, probably the best bar fight of all time, where all these cyborgs just start trying to kill her, but then run into each other and then start fighting each other because they're like, you freaking bunched into me, like just like maybe like old Western bar fight. And she's like kicking ass, throwing people left and right. Table gets thrown into the back of the bar, knocking all the bottles off. I started to cry a little. I was like, oh, you can't waste alcohol. And just like this awesome bar fight. And then later we see Hugo's just kind of like standing back like, oh, wow. But the great part of this is like where we see some like chemistry between those two is Hugo's like, what are you doing? And then she's like, Hugo, I'm going to need you to stand way back. Yeah, but like a face of just kind of like, I'm about to have some fun, and then turns to seriousness right after, right? Yeah. Like, so she's having fun in this moment. And he was like, all right, cool. And she ends up saving her from one dude who's going to hit her from behind. I think he had the shock stick that he uses to jack parts. And we get a scene where the dude sees him like afterwards, like, are you one of those creeps that's been jacking parts from people? Douche. Like, he like, but no words are spoken. And so afterwards, like while she's kicking ass and just being awesome, she's like, "Thanks, Hugo," and then like continues kicking ass.
Right. It was actually really cool because she goes from a total badass to like 2 seconds of, "Oh, I'm in love again," and then goes back to like kicking the crap out of everybody.
Then Dr. Ido runs in and he's like, "Stop it! Stop!" And no one's paying attention to him. And then he's finally like, "Well, I don't know how he knew this was happening, but whatever. Maybe there's like an email text thread that all the 100 warriors have, like a gram. They're like, oh man, this one chick's beating us all up in this bar." And he's like, oh shit.
Yeah, the guy with the dogs who's just sitting down the whole time, he's the one like sending out these SMS messages.
He's live streaming it for everyone, putting it on Snapchat. And so Ido walks in and he finally gets everyone to stop. He's like, if you don't stop, there's no more free repairs. And everyone's like, oh. All right, whoa.
You had to go there, man? You had to go there?
And then right after that, Alita's just standing there and it just like roundhouse kicks this dude in the face after it's all over. And Ida's like, "What the hell are you doing? I told you to get out of here. What the hell?" They're about to have an argument, and the Grishka kicks the big front door in, right? And I already missed a part. Great character, great range on Rose, and I'm going to highlight it because I think it's good. She's about to go into the bar, and he goes like, "Are we sure we want to do this?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm totally want to do this. This is how I'm going to live my life." And then the dog shows up out of nowhere, and she's like, "Oh my god, it's a dog! I love you. How are you? You want to come in the bar with me?" Like it just the dog just walks in the bar with them, and so we get that dynamic of her being a complete and total control badass to just being super innocent and super nice, and I bring it up because it's to set up this scene. Otherwise, it would have been random for you to understand what happened if you never watched the movie. But Grishka comes in. He's like, "Oh, hello, little flea." And then we see he has the new scorpion hand arm inserted. And Hugo's like, "Oh, man, that's the arm I stole. They put it on Grishka? Like, I'm second guessing all my life choices right now." and Grishka's like, "I'm about to take you out, Alita." And he was like, "All right, let's go. Like, I wanted to get these dudes help. If you're not going to help me, I'm about to take you out right now." And the dog runs up and starts barking at Grishka, and Grishka's like, "The only brave soul in this bar," and just like scorpions him. And we know it's off-screen kill. And this is the point where I want to bring up a question to you. Why do bad guys insist on killing the dogs of badasses? It does never work out for them. Like in every sense of every movie, if this happens, it does not work out in their favor.
Don't kill John Wick's dog. Come on. Who's not learned this by now?
There's the mashup I want. I want Alita and John Wick to just have a team up and just go to
team
town.
up. Yes, definitely a team up. I don't know. It's the whole point of it in screenplay writing is character development to portray this type of egocentric personality in the sense that there's something sinister about this person that they get off on taking life regardless of its shape or form. That would be my understanding of why they do it so many times, in like all bad guys across the movies and stuff. You always got to kill a pet. If you take like Halloween, take like Dexter, one of our favorite TV shows, like this, it is, as we understand it in society, it is a character that develops, that teaches us as the movie watcher that this person is a sinister person, and there's no helping them. At this point, there's no helping them. They're just
no redemption for Grishka, if there ever was at this point. Right. He definitely crossed the line. And the dude who owns cyber dogs, is like, like, it's deeply offended. It's super upset. Deeply like, oh my god, you killed a dog. And Grishka's like, "Let's go downtown. We're gonna go below the town. This is where I'm from. Bringing you to my turf." And Alita drops the blood, puts the dog's blood on her eyes like it's like football chalk or football black, and she's like, "I will not stand by in the presence of evil." And everyone's like, "Okay." Like, I'm sure everyone's like, "All right, Alita, cool. All right, yeah, all right." Then the point is that he doesn't have a bounty on him, so none of the Wonder Warriors want to help. And Ido's like, "What the hell? Why aren't you going to help us?" And they're like, "He doesn't have a bounty on him." And then, but by the way, Grishka's been upgraded and is even wider, if possible. He has become wider than 15 feet. He's now 20 feet wide.
He's basically a square at this point.
With the awesome scorpion hand. And so he rips a hole in the floor, goes down. "Come with me, Alita." Alita comes down. He's all like, "This is where I'm from. I'm from the where the trash of the trash goes. This is where I was raised, and this is where I wanted to fight you." And she's like, "Well, this is where you're gonna die." And I was like, "Yes." And so we get an awesome fight scene, which I'll gloss over because I can't describe it to you in enough awesome detail. You just need to go watch it. But essentially, Alita is having a little more trouble because he's been upgraded, but she's still very much fighting in full tilt. And really, what fails her in this fight, and the reason she loses it, is that her body fails her. She gets accidentally summoned. She gets shut up, Siri. She gets ripped up by the scorpion hands, and her body just couldn't. Like, it wasn't her lack of knowledge or her lack of prowess in fighting; it was her body that failed her. So she ends up just having essentially her torso and one good arm. That is all that's left on her. and she's like trying to fight, and that's where we get another flashback of her like in a training bubble with her mentor from the first flashback, telling her to egging her on. We now see that she's been teaching her, so it's like a mentor character. Shout out to, apparently that was Michelle Rodriguez in this movie, who's in this movie for even less time than Jai Courtney, probably, if we added it up. But cool, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's a cool.
probably more time.
Like
Jai Courtney
it's
is like
she's,
3 seconds.
so she
So
gets another
I'll
flashback.
say this. Well, I'm gonna pause you right here about this fight scene. I think it's pretty important because one, I think Alita starts to figure out the limits of her body in the body that she's in right now, which is Ito's daughter's original body that she never got to use, and Grishka also starts to realize um, the difficult opponent that he's facing. You know, even with his upgrade, he came in all badass, like all hunky dory, and then all of a sudden it's like actually difficult, and he's like, I'm still not really winning this fight.
Yeah.
You say that it was her body that failed her. I actually disagree. I do think her body failed her because I think if she had a different body, she'd be better, faster, whatever, with the body she's about to get. But any warrior, the mindset should be adaptive. In my opinion, it is her pride and ego that fails her, in the sense that she is so amped up and ready to fight. And they actually set this up pretty well, I think. She is always looking for the fight up until this point, but she just isn't ready yet. And part of her not being ready is the fact that she does not have her body, which she's about to have. But a real warrior would know the limitations of themselves, right? And they would be adaptable, and they would understand that they are limited to certain things, and kind of whatever. So in my opinion, she's just a little bit too eager. Like she comes out from behind the rock, jumps off the pole, jumps off the rock, and then she's just like gonna haymaker Grishka in the face. Like that is a very prideful attempt, right? If she had stuck with her original fighting style in the alley, which, what do they call it? Panzer something? Panzer
Kunz. Yeah.
Then she probably would have won, because essentially that fighting style was about being quick and fast and hitting like weak spots, right?
And she does in that fight.
She does a little bit, yes. But
She hits the shoulder. She does the same kick,
right?
but he's just like, because he got upgraded. They like planned for it. Maybe they even the same shoulder. They're like, we'll beef up this one joint and hope that she's prideful enough to hit the same shoulder. And then she'll be like, oh man, my plans are ruined. I can't use Panzerkunst anymore. Like,
exactly. And then she does this whole like prideful, I'm going to fly from 50 feet away and punch you. Not really a good, no soldier makes that call. Let's be honest. No soldier does that. You get close, you get in tight, and you play the short game, and then you get out. So, in my opinion, there's multiple things fail her. And I actually think this is important for writing a character like this, because she has to learn herself. She has to learn her capabilities and her talents and her skills and her weaknesses. And I think at this moment in time, Grishka tested them and she learned them, almost to her demise. Almost.
Yeah. That being said, she ends up coming out of this fight not looking that bad, because she's being held up by the hair. Grishka's doing his evil guy monologue, like, you're a flea, I'm gonna make you scream for mercy, all this other stuff, just like egging her on. And she hits like a joint in his arm and his elbow to let her drop, and she catches herself with, remember, torso, one arm, that's all she's got on her. She catches herself in her arm, looks dope as hell. I'm like, damn, all right, cool, that's awesome that you can do that. Does a one-handed push-up, launches herself up into the air, and just throws her arm and breaks her arm in Grishka's eye. And she's like, fuck your mercy. And then I was like, yeah, go Alita. And she like,
did you stand up and throw popcorn?
Yeah, I would have if I had wanted to waste money. But she gets laid out, and luckily we get the cavalry of Ido, and with his jet hammer, with Hugo and his convenient weapons against cyborgs that are like, hey, why does he have these awesome weapons that work well against cyborgs? And the dude who owns Cyberdogs, who really does not like the fact that he killed the little puppy. He's just like, I just don't like guys who don't like dogs. Like, this is reason. That's all he needed. We're like, yep, all right, yeah, that makes sense. So we get like some Doberman cyborgs to chase Grishka off as he's on fire, and he runs away. Anyways, this leads Dr. Ido taking the broken Alita back home and doing the thing he said he wouldn't do, and that is putting her into the body. And he's like with his assistant, and she's doing her thing, he's doing his thing. They put it together. By the way, the tech aspect, sci-fi tech aspect of the surgery stuff he does, I really like little details where he has his little keypad and like eye. Her freaking cybernetic appendage turns into like tweezers and clippers and stuff. Like, all awesome. There's just awesome little details. Puts her in a body, and he's like, yeah, it's working. It's great. And so like it turns out this body's made of like little tiny nano machines. And now they're adjusting to her self-image of herself. And everything's a little changing in the body. And it turns out she's actually older than a teenager because she has bigger breasts and she's more defined. She has curves and everything. She's becoming
genius writing, by the way.
Yeah, she thinks of herself a lot older than apparently everyone else thinks her of. Yeah. She's currently is. So that's an interesting character development there. And they all go to sleep because she's still dreaming. She's dreaming. Like we see like the REM. Yeah, REM. And they all pass out, and we get a scene where Ido is sleeping and she gets kissed by Alita, and then Alita shows off how awesome her body is and just does like these super crazy flexible yoga poses and one finger push-ups, and they're like, wow, that's great. And kind of this point is where Ido's character kind of accepts who Alita is. This is who Alita is. She's an awesome warrior person. But I tried to stop you from being it, but this is clearly who you should be. This body was made for you. This is what keep you safe. This is probably what leads him to do this more, is that she is fully able to protect herself in this body as opposed to out of this body. And then at this point, I believe we don't get too much talk back and forth after this body's happened, until Alita goes to go thirst after Hugo again. And she just drops in, and I forgot what he's doing. He's just like, oh crap, Alita, what's up? We missed a scene earlier where Hugo takes Alita to see the city, Zalem. He's like, that's my dream. I want to get to Zalem. I've been working hard for it. That's where I want to go. It's better than this shithole. I want to get to Zalem. By the way, you're from Zalem because you were dropped from the trash. Your doctor didn't tell you that. And she's like, apparently I'm the girl that was forgotten, or something, like, kind of setting up her attitude. And I'm sorry I forgot it, but that was a scene earlier. So we get this scene where she's like, so does it bother you that I'm, that my new body or something? He's like, there's a scene where he's like, well, no, he's like, well, most guys would be bothered by the fact that you're so powerful. And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you could rip my arm off and beat me with it with the wet end. And she's like, ha ha ha, well, don't piss me off. And I'm like, okay, this is dialogue. And they go off on their own. And her friend's like, the one with the fro is like, I've just never been into hard bodies. And that's kind of his judgment. And the other girl's like, she's awesome. What are you talking about? Like, she's like, well, she was Erm. She's the enemy. And she was like, well, yeah, 300 years ago. It's like, good point. Long time ago. She clearly doesn't have any loyalties to Erm at this point. She's so we get the love scene where they finally kiss. This was the scene in the trailer that made me think that I was going to really be annoyed by Hugo. They kept it into the movie, and it still kind of makes me cringe. Where she's like,
it's a little silly. Like, it's this is where the PG-13ness comes in. They did not write this for an entirely only adult audience.
And I'm not sure if there's a better way to address the idea he's trying to express, right? How else could he express the idea? Because she's like, does it bother you that I'm not fully human? I'm okay with the conversation up until this point.
Yeah. You're the most human person I've ever met. Literally makes no sense. Not a drop of logic or reason in that entire statement.
But the idea is there, right? Like, it doesn't matter that you're not human. Physically. You're probably the most pure person that I've ever met. You express the most humanity, the most kindness, the most willing to fight, the most loyalty. These are things and ideas you could express. They just decide to sum it up into one really quick sentence.
Please don't shut the door that
hard. Podcast making.
Yeah.
And fine, we're past it. They kiss. It's awesome. They're having a good time. what's important about this afterwards is that Grishka comes back, his eyes all messed up. We get to see Sheeran, and we get to see Vector, and Grishka's like, I don't even want you to remove her cyborg hand from my eye. It's the pain I want to keep to remind myself. And it's like, all right, Grishka, that's. And so we get Nova takes over again, and he's like, get me Alita. I'm gonna upgrade Grishka even more again, fix him up, do this thing. Vector, who apparently gets really bothered by the fact when he gets taken over, is like, I'm not gonna rely on iron body peasants to do my job. You know what I'm gonna do? Nova's going to use Grishka to do this problem. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna rely on a human to convince an iron body to get into a fight with other iron bodies to do the job for me. That's what I'm gonna do. I just think it's funny. He's like, I'm not gonna rely on Iron Body. I'm gonna rely on 7 Iron Bodies to try and do the job for me. It's just funny, like the way he worded it. Like, I'm not gonna rely on Iron Bodies. I'm gonna work on human, which I understand. He's gonna use Hugo and his ambitions to get to Zalem, to convince Alita to be part of the Motorball, so that he can fill the Motorball team, the training team, with a bunch of murderers and wanted felons to kill her. But I still think it's funny. He's like, I'm not going to use Iron Bodies. I'm going to use him to use 7 Iron Bodies to kill her, which is fine. I agree with the increase of odds. I just think it's funny that he took a stance. Like, I'm not going to use Iron Bodies to do my job.
Yeah.
I'm going to use someone else to use 7 bodies of iron to do my job for me. Whatever. But so that's the big plot, right? Hugo hangs out, has a few drinks. Vector dressed to the nines again. Just every outfit so good. He's like, yeah, I'll get you the Zalem, bro. But hey, man, you should convince your girlfriend to be in Motorball, man. She's pretty awesome. He's like, you know what? You're right. That's another avenue with which I can get to Zalem. I'm going to be all for it. So then we get a scene where Hugo's recovering from a hangover, no shirt on, in amazing shape. Good job for you, buddy. You're in amazing shape. Just calm 6-pack, right? He doesn't even need to like force it. It's just there. And we get Alita in the windowsill while he's asleep, just like pounce like an eagle, just thirsting after him. Like this, that's the peak thirst moment for me with Alita and Hugo. Like, she's very thirsty after him, and Hugo would probably be just as thirsty after her, if not for the fact that he's been like ripping off cyborgs at this point and kind of feels really guilty about it right now. He's like, I'm falling for Cyborg. I've been ruining Cyborg's lives. This is about as much character development as he gets in this movie. And we have an interesting scene. And I think the only reason I'm okay with it is because of Rose Salazar. So Hugo, she's like, oh, so you want to go to Zalem? But I can't go to Zalem. I'm here. Why we can't really go to Zalem together? And he's like, well, it'll be a law for now. And she's like, well, how much money do you need? She's like, 90K. I need 90K. She's like, oh, well, I can get that bounties in like a week. I'll just do the bounty thing. I'll give you the money. You can go to Zalem, and then I can sell my heart. I'll give my heart to you because this thing's apparently could power the whole city. It's probably worth 1 billion credits. We can sell that, and I can get a replacement. And Hugo's like, whoa. You're really handing your heart to me? Let's calm down. Put the heart back in your body. We're not going to sell it. But you know what you could do? You could just be Motorball. We can win our way that way, and that's no one has to sacrifice anything. But that whole scene of like, I'll give my heart to you, I'll give everything, is only brought back by the acting from Rose Salazar and convincing you of that situation. Also, with the line where she's like, I'm all or nothing. And that's believable of her character at this point. We've seen it to that point, which brings that scene home for me for not being a bad scene. And for the way it finishes, where she puts her heart back in, she's like, that was intense, wasn't it? This whole time, that was like, okay with the scene. Up until that point, I'm like, this is just a bit much for me. For her being so far in love and so quickly to just willing to give that sacrifice. But I think the acting of Rose throughout it, plus the way they finish that scene, ties a bow on it for me of being, okay, I'm kind of okay with this scene. Don't know how you felt about that scene when you were watching it, but those are my thoughts.
I actually really liked it. I think I like it for what it was meant to do, and what it was meant to do was reaffirm the character, like Alita's character, in the sense that she is an all or nothing person, which essentially means that um, it's all like she's got a lot of heart. And I don't necessarily mean like she's overly emotional. I mean like she's got a lot of heart, a lot of character. She is
You
very
mean
much.
that her heart's super sophisticated and
That's not.
powers the city?
That's not what I
Is
mean.
that what you?
No,
Okay.
literally not what I mean. I mean like character development. Like she's very courageous. She's got a lot of heart. She's got a lot of do the right thing. Stop doing the wrong thing. Do the right thing. Like that's what she's got a lot of heart, which is why she's so willing to give her heart away. Um, it also speaks to her innocence. She's not. She has. And it's Hugo in this moment. He says you can't do stuff like that. Don't just do stuff for people, because he's got experience being screwed over. He's got experience fending for himself, and all these other things that she's essentially innocent and hasn't. No offense to her, but hasn't had to work for some of these things yet. Ido just kind of gives the stuff to her. Whereas Hugo doesn't, right? So Hugo's like, you can't be like that because someone's going to take advantage of you. So this also expresses, his actual willingness to how much he cares for her, in the sense of like, if you continue down this road, someone is going to take advantage of you. And I care about you, and I don't want you to just give your heart to anybody. And he's also feeling guilty about himself, so he's kind of like, especially me, because not all of us do the right thing. And she has this idea in her head that Hugo's just this perfect normal guy, and he's kind of like, I'm not, and you don't know that. I'm also not willing to say that right now, so I'm just going to say no. So it's actually a very dynamic moment, I think, that reaffirms both of their characters and is very important, an important part to reaffirm them, because it essentially tells us how far she's willing to go as far as her thirstiness is for Hugo, but it also is starting to be the beginning point of where Hugo's getting turned around, in the sense that, they didn't really do a good job of building him up as a criminal. They could have done better at that aspect, but this is essentially the turning point for when he's like, I've got to walk away from this life. And this should be more important.
Yeah.
And I think this is the moment where we kind of get some of that. So I think I'm with it. I'm cool with it. No, doesn't bother me at all. I liked it.
Anyways, we continue the story. Alita's convinced to do the motorball thing. She's like, yeah, sure, why not? I can win this thing and bring you with me on my coattails. You moocher. Let's do this. I'm in love with you. And we get a great scene of Dr. Ido like patting her up and like giving her skates, and she's like, let's do this. It's just a training thing. You're going to be with the C squad, right? And it's going to be just, you're trying out to be one of the main motorballers. Let's do this thing. Great scene where he's just like trying to give her tips and like, don't break your body because I can't fix it. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. And so she's like, go find a seat. You're making me nervous. And like, it's a great scene. And Hugo calls Alita and is like, sorry. Yeah, Hugo calls Alita. No, Alita calls Hugo, right? Either way, they have a phone conversation with no phone. And she's like, hey, we're going to be here? He's like, yeah, I got to stop off somewhere. I'll be there soon. He's like, oh, well, you're the only reason I'm doing this. Why aren't you here? Because he's supposed to be his coach. He's supposed to be her coach. And he's like, yeah, I'll be there soon. And so she goes out. And then I forget the exact chronologically like how the scene goes, but Hugo has
Can you hear my background noise?
a little bit, yeah.
Like loud?
It's in the background. I can hear it audibly, yeah. But it's not overpowering, but it's there.
I mean, like, you think it's going to bother people watching?
Maybe.
Yeah.
We're dumpster fire at this point, man. I don't know why we're not.
All right, just keep going.
It's just what, fuck it in the bucket, bro. Let's just do this. All right. So we learned that Vector is.
Is that really loud?
Yeah, that's really loud. That's the reason I stopped.
Okay, I don't know if you want to wait like 15 minutes, but she's like
She's,
she's in a bad mood and she wants to shower. So
is that a shower?
yeah,
Oh, okay. Well, I thought she was vacuuming. That's why I was like, damn. What are you doing? Uh,
you're cleaning the office right now. Come on.
but anyways, we can keep going. We'll just keep it in there, man. That's fine. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's roll with the punches. So we get to the Roller Brawl event. Uh, Vector has supplied all the bad guys, like either they're Hunter Warriors or they're people that are wanted by Hunter Warriors, which is an interesting dichotomy because, like, I could just arrest that dude and turn him in for money. But he's put a bigger bounty on Alita's head. So he's essentially everyone that's not Alita in this training event is there to kill her. And so we set that up. Ido knows the Hunter Warriors, knows the bounties, is like, hey, this is weird. Those are all people that shouldn't be in this race right now. And he calls Alita. He's like, Alita, they're oh my god. And she's like, oh, why you call me, Dad? I'm just trying to be, I'm trying to be live my life. Why you call me right now? And he's like, they're all out to kill you. She's like, which one? And she's like, all of them. And then she just looks at every single one, and everyone looks at her like, yeah, I'm about to kill you. And she's just like, fuck it, let's do this thing. Just like immediately like, all right, I know what I'm doing. Race starts, and probably the best action scene I've seen in a long time.
Really
This
good.
rollerballs, and I can't summarize it for you and do it justice. So I'm just gonna say, watch this movie. This scene is awesome. But essentially, what this enforces is that Alita is a total badass in her new body. I think she only has one or two scares. They're not really that scary, but essentially, she just hands everyone their ass. And in fact, if Hugo hadn't called her and asked her for help, she probably would have comfortably beaten all these people, in my opinion. Like, I think she was just totally trashing everyone. So while those events happening, while she's trying to, the race him too. And it's interesting to think about because it's like, so did she immediately think? Because I like when I see the bounty, so jacking for parts, minor crime. A crime, you would have a bounty on your head, but not nearly as bad as murder. So she sees the murder one. I figure she'd be like, he already told me you framed him for murder. I don't care. This doesn't bother me, right? But she's immediately kind of downloads information that, oh, no, he's been jacking parts from cyborgs. And so that's why she's so upset and pissed off. And he's like, I never killed anyone. It was just a weird plot hole in my mind.
They're really trying to move this part of the story along. They're not trying to spend a lot of time here. They're trying to get past it. And so they did the shortest version they could of saying what needed to be said and understanding what needed to be understood so that we can get to the dilemma of her being between two, in two important calls here. What do I do here? So decide between love or decide between, right and wrong.
Yeah. So the important part besides that critique is that the situation is that the zoo has bounty in his head. She cannot stop or prevent Zapan from killing Hugo unless she kills Hugo herself as her own bounty. So that is the conflict that's now within her. Zapan's all doing his bad boy monologue. I totally got you. Ha 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 ha. I'll make it easy for you. I'm going to stab Hugo in the stomach. All while Alita's like trying to figure out what to do. So Hugo's dying. She takes him to the church. We have a great, a pretty good moment where, she's like, what do I do? I love you. This is so messed up. And he's like, you can't go out there with me. They'll kill you. You gotta kill me. Or, that's the situation. There's really no way around it. For whatever reason, Sheeran is there. I guess she was tailing her. I don't know. She's just at the church, right?
Well, she shows up because she was in the box office with... I call him a box. She was in the box office suite, with Vector.
But that's a far distance. She's not a cyborg. Like, I don't know how she got there. But she's there, and she sees this example of love and innocence, and remembers that she's a doctor, and she's supposed to be helping people, and she kind of finds herself after being lost after the death of her daughter. So she just shows up, and Alita's like, not totally surprised she's there, right? She's just like, oh, I would give my life for him. And she's like, well, I have an idea. And she cuts Hugo's head off. And then they plug that head into Alita's body to keep it alive, which has killed him, I guess. So she walks out. Zapan's all like, oh, we can kill you now because you stopped us from doing the bounty. And she's like, I got the head of my enemy, or I got the head of the bounty. And the robots are like, yep, you definitely killed that dude. Here's the money. You're good to go. We're going to go home now. And Zapan's like, oh, well, no. And then he sees what she did. And he's like, oh, you're clever. You're clever. And he's like, tries to interfere. And she's like, are you interfering with a bounty? Or the robots get real pissed off. And you're like, you can't take a bounty from a hunter warrior. And she's like, oh, is that what's happening? Grabs his sword, cuts his face off, and then just walks away. and Zapan's like, my face. Half his jaw has been cut off, so only part of his teeth are flapping at this point. Great comeuppance. I don't know if he dies or not, but I feel like for that character, killing his pride and cutting his face off is probably the worst thing you could do to him. Plus taking the sword. So they take Hugo back to Ido. He gets a robot body. He's alive. But at this point is where the third act starts, where she finally goes to her final confrontation with Vector, but actually she's going after... She doesn't know about Nova yet, right?
She's heard the name, but yeah, she doesn't... she's literally... Because actually, when she goes after Vector, at some point she says, I want to speak to him.
Right, but I think that's after...
Says speak, sorry.
Yeah, that's after her fight with Garushka. That's where another flashback happens. That's when she learns about Nova and who her enemy is. And then she does that. So when she appears... So anyways, we'll go. Ido's all in on Alita badass right now. She's like, you're the only one who could do this. Go do your thing. And she's like, yeah. And she just walks off. And, Hugo's still alive. So she walks into the facility for the Hunter Warriors. All the machines are like, you look pissed off. We're going to stop you. You're threatening. Don't do that. And she has her sword, which turns out we learned earlier that she has this weird blue flame that she can generate. The doctor's like, I have no idea what's going on. I just know you could do it. I don't know what that's for. And it turns out it's to light the blade the Erm blade that Zapan had, a blade like it, not necessarily that blade, to become like just an awesomer blade. Like it's already sharp, but now it's like hot, and so it can cut through everything. She goes a great little fight scene. And I say little because at this point she's elevated to her complete badassness. So what should be an awesome fight and prolonged fight of like her facing 8 robots, she kills in like a minute flat. Like she just like goes to town on every single one and just takes them out. She takes a gun and like shoots the robot dude who's like, "You're violating Protocol 7." Just like destroys that whole complex. And Vector's upstairs like, "Security, did you defeat her? Is she gone? Is she gone? You're not talking. Is she dead? Is she dead?" And then she drops through the window. She confronts Vector. Because Hugo, she's like, "You promised Hugo you could get him to Zalem. You're a liar. You've been using people." She finds out from Mito that this is a scam that he's been using for a long time. And he's like, "No, I totally get people to Zalem. Look at Dr. Sheeran." And then it opens this case, and it's just her eyeballs, brain, and some other part of her body, like her heart. She's going to Zalem right now. I told him she'd get there, just not how she wanted. That's my scam. And I was like, damn, that's messed up, man. And she's confronting her, and then she gets shot in the side by Grishka, because Grishka's there now, with even more upgrade, even less human bits on him now, even wider, probably 25 feet wide at this point. Just keeps getting wider. And and while she gets shot, that's where she has her final flashback, where it's her and the Erm forces on Earth running up to Zalem, running up those tubes we had seen earlier in the movie. And it's her and Michelle Rodriguez's character, which I don't know if we actually get her name. I can look it up, but they don't never mention it. They're up the tube. This tube has a defense mechanism where like this churning razor blade just runs down it, which is dope as hell. Like, oh, okay, all right, I didn't know. That's cool. And destroys like the entire team besides Alita and her mentor. And she gets a flashback of her mentor, like, "You can't quit. We gotta kill Nova."
The mission is Nova.
Yeah, the mission is to kill Nova and to kill Zalem. And so she gets out of that funk and now knows who her enemy is and comes into full focus and proceeds to kick Garushka's ass. Just not even a challenge at this point. Throws his hands at her, cuts all the freaking chains off, and he's like, "Oh," and his weapon's gone, and just cuts him in half. Yeah. Super fast. Like, she's elevated to superhuman status, just a pure utter badassness. What I call equilibrium factor, which is one of my favorite movies because of the fact that in the movie Equilibrium of Christian Bale, they always tout him as being a badass. In a lot of movies, they tout someone as being a badass, but they always end up getting their ass kicked at some point. But in Equilibrium, what I loved is like, no, he never gets his ass kicked. He is a badass. And there's a great fight with that Ty Diggs, I believe is the actor's name.
Tay Diggs,
he's like, yeah. Tay Diggs. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna kick your ass, son," and it's over in 5 seconds. Christian Bale kills him. Like, just. It's like, "Yeah, we trained, but I didn't show you everything, dude. I didn't show you all my tricks," and he just kills him. And I love that. I love that they're like, he's a badass, so we will continue for this character being a badass. With Lita, they did the same thing, and that's why I appreciated it. Killed Grishka so fast, just sliced him in half with her awesome blade. And at this point, we get a great scene where she's like, "Speak!" And then, Vector's like, I don't know what to say." And she's like, "No, you idiot." And then Nova takes over, and then we have a great monologue where Nova's like, "You impressed me. I didn't think you were going to be this awesome. That's interesting. It's fascinating." He's just a rich person playing with ants, and he's just like, "This is above or below me, and this is whatever. You can do whatever you want. This is just fun for me." And Lita's like, she kills poor Bashar Ali, who dies again. And it's really upsetting that a great bad guy, another great version of him being a bad guy, gets killed. And not that I don't mind Edward Norton at all, but I'm just saying it's a bummer that Bashar Ali got killed again. And I want him to keep living to be bad guys, but whatever. But we get a great scene of him progressively dying and talking as someone who's taken over his body, which is an interesting acting job, to pull that off.
That
I think fatal. He nailed it. And she's like, your biggest mistake. You know what your biggest mistake was? And he's like, what was that? Doubting the person I am, or something like that.
Underestimating me.
Yeah, great scene. And he dies, and we kind of flash past that. We missed a big scene where Hugo gets chased out of the town. He's trying to get to Zalem. That was his only dream. So he has a body powerful enough to get up there. He runs up one of the tubes again, much like her flashback, to get to Zalem. She tries to save him, but Nova activates defenses, ends up killing him. He gets cut up. Alita tries to save him, but she can't because his body ends up breaking and falling. And he has a great last touch where he's just like, thank you for saving me. And then he falls to his death. Pretty sad. And depending on if you believe that relationship to that point, they either affected you or not affected you on varying levels. But that's essentially the event that happens. So Alita loses the love that the person she fell in love with while trying to save him. As badass as she is and as capable as she is and as awesome as she is, she couldn't save the person that she cared about. So we flash forward. Alita has become a motorball champion, looking dope. Has a number 99 on her shoulder. Forgot about that because that was her number in the that was her name, was 99. And she is about to become the champion of motorball so that she can go up to Zalem. And she comes out to the crowd cheering her name and just like takes her blade out to the sky, pointing it probably, I'm sure she's aiming it straight at Nova, just lights it on fire. Is like, hey, bitch, I'm coming for it. and then Nova like takes his weird glasses off, and that's where we reveal it's Edward Norton in a white mullet, scientist mullet. Clarification, not a normal mullet, scientist mullet. And that's kind of where the movie wraps up. It ends with her, essentially setting up maybe another movie where she's going to go challenge Zalem and take it down and then kill Nova. So I don't know if I missed anything in that cover up, if there's any details you need to kind of explain.
No, I think it's great. Overall, I love the movie. Again, I saw it twice. In fact, I actually saw it before you because you had that wintry storm blow in, which prevented you from seeing it. And you refused to talk to me for 3 days.
Yeah, I didn't want to ruin it, man. This is a movie I was really looking forward to.
I know, and I was like, I literally texted you, left in the theater. I was like, oh my gosh, Alita.
The more we talk, the less these conversations that we're trying to film and give as content to people are effective. So that's kind of my strategy.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's cool. It's fun. I'm just saying that I liked it so much, and you liked it so much that you're like, no, do not talk to me.
So. Overall, this there's issues. I kind of expressed some issues with this movie. It's definitely not perfect. It's unfortunately not doing as well as it probably should be doing, in my opinion. I feel like in the box office it could be doing a lot better, but I'm hoping we get a sequel. I don't know. It's been in gestation for so long. So much money has been spent to make it. I don't know if they're going to think it's justifiable to make a sequel as far as the big people that make decisions, which is a real bummer because I feel like there's a lot of good performances. I like the character Alita a lot. I like her progression. Whether or not, like I said, I feel like the weakest part of this movie is Hugo, but it's the part that is gone after this movie, so I don't have to deal with it in the second movie. So I'm fully okay with progressing forward with the story, but it's a bummer that I don't know if it's going to happen.
I'm pretty sure it's going to. I'm pretty convinced. I honestly don't care that the first opening weekend. Give it a month and see what it does worldwide. And I think it's going to be big, and all it really has to do is make what its budget was. It doesn't really have to, exceed. Doesn't have to hit 800 million like Wonder Woman or anything like that. It just has to make its budget, and it maybe don't have to make its budget. They're going to make another one if the producers feel like it's worth the investment. And I think by all the positive feedback you have, I think it's going to prove that it's worth the investment. I've only got one problem with the movie. And it's the biggest problem that I have with it. And it's the... Let
me guess. You're upset that there's no cars in this movie.
No, I don't care.
You're upset that her favorite food is chocolate.
No, I don't care.
You're upset that for whatever reason she decides to wear a tank top over her awesome body.
Don't care at all. No, the only problem I have with this movie is that now I have to figure out which movie to take out of my top 10 to put this movie in it. How dare this movie do that to me?
Oh, the travesty!
I can't
How
believe
unfortunate
it.
for you.
So annoying. And
You
actually, I
personally,
really mean my top 20. I had to like narrow it down and be like, I'm just going to call it a top 20 because I can't decide on 10. So it's in my top
that's the
20,
reason.
potentially my top 10, but I'm leaving
That's the
those.
reason I don't do that. I don't do lists like
Yeah,
that.
well, you're not cool. Everyone likes top 10s and top
Hey,
20s.
hey, you know what? That's
I
my
love it.
scale to you watchers. As we're wrapping up this episode, is that this is a movie I'm going to buy immediately when it comes, probably to 4K, and put it on my shelf and watch it in 4K on
Definitely.
my beautiful 4K OLED, and it's gonna be awesome. This movie is great fun. It's like I like a distinction between the definitions of a movie and a film. There's a difference between being a great movie and a great film. I feel like a great movie has far less to do with like award recognition or the craft or the best of all the factors, storytelling, screenwriting,
Yeah, yeah. My four-point
shooting.
rating system, right? You got the writing,
Yeah.
the acting, the cinematography, and the directing.
So like if you were to hit the top marks on that, that would probably be a good film,
Hmm.
as I'm gonna call it from now on. A good film. This is a great movie. And I feel like you can enjoy it. You enjoy your time. My sister, who probably has no right or business watching this movie or enjoying it, loved it. Like that's a good movie. That's a great movie. It's not a good film, right? Like it's a little bit different. Um, that's kind of how I separate them. But this movie is worth watching, and it's worth watching in the theaters. And it's unfortunate that I feel like people aren't doing it, and it's a bummer. It bums me out. But I brought back by the great performance of Rose and the awesome character of Alita, and how I want to keep watching her be a badass. Like I'm all for it. Uh,
Well, I would say expect a second one. I honestly think you're going to get one because I see no reason why not. It's not always just about money. Lots of movies get made for the fans of the movies, not just for the box office money. Um, I think it's a great movie, and I still think it's a pretty good film. Even technically speaking,
say,
there's not
say
a
it,
film.
say it like I said. Film.
um,
Add extra I in there.
yeah, okay.
Film.
I don't think there can be criticisms, but that's just someone who wants to criticize something. If you sit down and technically look at things, you're not going to argue much with the choices that they made in areas where they had to speed the story up, or in areas where they had to sacrifice or, change things around because of the rating or whatever. Technically speaking, there are many, many worse films that do way better in the box office than this film does. In fact, no offense to Hobbs and Shaw, but Hobbs and Shaw is going to royally suck as a film and barely be a good movie. But I won't say that yet because I haven't watched it yet. We'll see. But anyway, um, I think the movie's great, and I think it's still a pretty good film. So
As a person who's currently watching all the Fast and Furious films again in their entirety, Hobbs and Shaw is going to be so much fun.
but that's it. That's all it's going to be. Technically
Which is,
speaking,
have you
they're
ever
literally
watched
going
those
to ruin the
movies?
Fast and Furious franchise.
How they've already become superheroes at this point. I'm watching them now.
Yeah, yeah,
They
I'll tell you
I just
exactly why.
watched
Because the
I just
characters in
watched
that movie are two completely different characters than the Hobbs and Shaw that are in the other movies. Two
I
completely
just
separate
watched
characters.
Dom crash a Daytona into a wall and fly from the Daytona to catch Letty, who's on a tank, and grab her and then break his fall by landing on a car, and they're fine.
Yeah,
This movie's already got
just wait. Just I'm
franchise.
telling you,
The
they're gonna
franchise has
ruin it.
already got
They're
past
gonna ruin
the
it.
believability.
No.
That I love that the fact that they're essentially just going to make Idris Elba Captain America. They're like, that's
Yeah,
we're already at this point. Everyone's superheroes. The Rock can throw a grown man into the ceiling and into the wall and into the corner, and just with one arm, and it like we're totally okay with it.
it's
Like
going down. It's going down. The
these
whole
movies are
franchise
so
gonna crash into a wall here. I gotta
just,
run. So
yeah. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. We're already talking about other franchises now.
Alita's awesome. Loved it.
Right.
Go watch it if you
Yep.
haven't seen it. Watch it again if you have seen it because it's really awesome. Make sure you go a big 3D screen. Shout out to Dan. That music's playing right now. Thanks a lot,
Should-
Dan.
yep.
Super awesome music.
Yep. And well, thank you for episode 4 of the Lunar's Cut. Thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, share. Podcast, YouTube, do all those things. Next episode, we don't know quite yet. It's either going to be our second try of Cowboy Bebop or
Lucky number
maybe
7.
do another. Yeah, maybe that
We'll do
movie.
an old
But
one.
thanks for coming with us. Thanks for sitting with us. Thanks for letting us ramble. And thanks for joining us on the edge of those seats. See you guys.
See you on the next one.